We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. If you're watching the YouTube version, Tom has something special in the background.
Yeah,
just a tiny little.
My son's not here, and my wife's not here, and I moved one of the bikes into my son's bedroom where I do this podcast because it was in my way, and I needed to move it, and it was on the porch, and usually the porch of this apartment complex was just screened in, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just bring it inside because my son might have cycled with me on Sunday, but then he decided not to. So I brought it inside in case he was going to, and then I was like, why would I put it back out there? We're going to be gone next week anyway, so I might as well just leave it inside. So I put it in this bedroom back here.
All we're seeing is handlebars because it's just half of the screen.
Yeah.
I can see more on we're using Teams again. We didn't even bother trying Jammy this week because it hasn't worked the past 2 weeks. Don't know what's going on with Jammy. So Microsoft Teams it is with its...
For those of you that know anything about bikes, it's a specialized alley.
Okay. Yeah, definitely would not be able to tell it just from the little bit of handlebars we're seeing.
So yeah, I built that up for him from a bunch of spare parts we had lying around the shop. And that's his bike that he will be taking to college with him.
In case you can't tell from that beginning, we're just not planning to delve into the horrors of this past week, and there were horrors this past week. Why are there horrors every week to cover? But there definitely were. So
there's people kept texting me. They're like, "What's going on in your country, Tom?" Guess where they were texting me from? It was not. All my Canadian friends were like, "Tom, what's happening over there?" I'm like, "I am busy, not paying attention to it. Thank you very much."
I don't know. I get it. I don't know if that's the right tactic. I mean, I genuinely made that. I don't know if that's the right tactic to take or not. Is it better to be informed about things that you can't do anything about after they're already done, or
or even when they were in progress, they were not exactly in my backyard. So we already talked about it. Act locally or whatever, and think globally. And sometimes you have to be like, "Ooh, I'm not going to think about that for right now. Let me process that later when there's more information rather than being glued to my TV or my Twitter feed or whatever it is that people are doing these days to figure stuff out." So instead, since my wife is out of town and my children are mostly out of town and my son who is here and staying with me is never around because he's a very busy boy, and also he has friends, and also he's 19 and doesn't want to be around his dad, which I totally understand. I was like, well, I'm going to watch some stuff.
Yeah.
So this week, the big surprise is Tom watched something. And he's going to report on it. But let's have Rob tell us what he watched first. So that
really?
We can hold on to it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll start off with what we watched. So I finished up Squid Game Season 3. Ostensibly the end of the series.
Okay.
Now, as has been spoilery written about, I'm not going to go into any details, but they clearly left a path where if they wanted to continue the Squid Game franchise, there is a possibility of doing that with the way that they ended Season 3. This is not a shock for many shows, and in effect it was really only 2 seasons, where Season 2 was 7 episodes of the first half and Season 3 was 6 episodes of the final half, so it really was 2 story arcs that were told in this. So my take is I really quite liked this. Now, it's hard to use the word enjoy because it is very bleak and it is very down and it is very sad, and so I mean, in that sense, it's not like it was a fun time, but I very much liked this series. I liked what they did with seasons 2 and 3, and I seem to be kind of in the minority of that. I've I read a few reviews with TV reviewers that I typically agree with, or at least definitely see where they're coming from. And it was mostly like, oh, the mixed reception to this series. Like, really, it was mixed reception, and they're kind of like, oh, it didn't have the the sort of fun of season 1. I'm like, yeah, I agree. It didn't have the fun of season 1, but to me, that was the point.
The little I know about this show is that there's the main character from season 1 ends up back there in season 2 and 3 or whatever, right? Yeah. Is that like not the conceit?
He does.
In which case you're like, how could it not be? How can that guy not be like, dude, seriously?
Right. and that is, like I say, what impressed me with season 2 was writing it in a way where, like, okay, kind of makes sense that he ended up back in the Squid Game. It's like, how would the person who survived season 1 end up back there? And I thought they did a good job of that. And so both seasons 2 and 3, and I will agree with the criticism that they had all of the contestants in the Squid Game voting a lot in seasons 2 and 3. There was basically one big vote in season 1, and that was kind of its own event and its own episode almost. Seasons 2 and 3, there are many votes, and they drag on a little bit here and there, and I'm okay with that criticism. Some of those scenes dragged on a little bit. But there was almost this kind of like, forget the voting, get back to the games, and I'm like, no, you've really missed the point of what was being said. The writer-director was trying to say something with this series, and they kept going on about, because there was this whole behind-the-scenes thing where essentially the writer-director, the South Korean writer-director of Squid Game, made no money from season 1. He made like nothing from it. But coming back for seasons 2 and 3, actually got his payday there. And there was all this like stuff about how, it's just a paycheck and all this stuff. I'm like, no, that's unfair criticism of all that stuff. Like he had something to say, and maybe it wasn't what you wanted to hear. Yeah. And that's why you didn't like it, which fine, whatever. You're entitled to your own opinion, other reviewers. But to me, not getting what you would have made for season 2 is not a valid criticism of what was made. It's like, you can say it's not what I didn't like it because I wanted something else. That's fine. Right. But saying that the show itself is not good because it wasn't what you would have done, I'm like, no.
We're going to have some more discussions about that in just a minute. Okay. So you don't have to harp on too much about it, because we're circling back, Rob. We're circling back.
But my personal criticism of it was, now, I've had criticisms of many movies and shows where it really felt like they had no idea what the end of this thing was going to be, and they kind of just wrote it on the fly. And I don't always love that, unless it turns out brilliantly somehow. I typically don't like that. But the opposite side of it is essentially starting with the ending and then sometimes having to somewhat force and torture decisions to get to that ending. And that is the case with Squid Game. It is very clear that they wrote the ending first. There's no mistaking that. And so some of the decisions towards the end of the game feel forced because there's no other way to get to that ending without some manipulation. You can see the hand of the writer coming into the situation and manipulating it.
It's like, why did they make that decision? Because if not, then the plot doesn't work.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I mean, like, I felt it wasn't done in a like really horrible, that's completely unbelievable way, but it was done in a way where it's kind of like, I don't really see the characters that we have remaining necessarily completely playing things out the way that they did. It definitely felt like, outside influence was exerted upon them by the writer. So, that's my criticism of it, but I very much liked it. So you have to be down for this. You have to be down for it not being as fun as season 1, for it not being as, like, everything is new, because of course there's going to be repetition. You're coming back to the same game, and you have to be down for it's a downer. It's a downer of a show. Lots and lots and lots of people die. We know this, and not taking that lightheartedly. But again, you're talking to someone who I enjoyed this sequel to Joker because I really kind of enjoy audience contempt when it's coming from the writer. And so, Joker Folie à Deux was mostly panned, but like I kind of enjoyed it because they're like, oh, you were cheering for the bad guy in season 1? Well,
try to cheer for this.
Yeah.
I haven't seen either one of them, so I have no idea what happened. In either one of these movies, I will tell you that I do understand exactly where that comes from.
Right.
Exactly. As a writer, I understand exactly where that comes from. Where you're like, ooh, you missed the point, and you're going to have a hard time missing it this time because I'm going to make it super blatant for you.
So that's my take on Squid Game Season 3. If they do bring it back, it's very clear that if they do bring it back, if they're following on from what they left at the very, very end that it's going to be significantly different, but I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if they let the franchise go where that has set up, and I'd be fine with that. So the one movie,
like when 24, the first season of 24, people were just like, "Oh my god, this is the most amazing show ever." Right. I was like, yeah, but the next season's not going to be good.
It's hard to follow up on shows like that. Yeah, what do you do? So I appreciate one like Squid Game where they're like, we're not going to ignore what happened in season 1 or like do the exact same thing again, but with all new characters, no continuity, because that's an option. Could have done it that way. Absolutely, everybody is new. No continuity with the previous characters whatsoever. This is like, no, we're going to continue with the same characters, and we're going to go where that logically might go, which is not as fun a place. So the one movie that I watched this week was Companion. This is quite new. It's another Jack Quaid starring movie, so I guess I'm on a Jack Quaid bent for the past few weeks here.
I like Jack Quaid.
I like him. I like him. He's a good actor. He's definitely being used as in real life, he's very tall and good looking, but cast as the everyman and everything. Yeah, the everyman.
Yeah, because since we're all tall and good looking,
right,
Rob.
Like, yeah, I think Jack Quaid, if you saw him in real life, he kind of stands out. It's how he became a celebrity and well known. Plus the whole nepotism thing. But nonetheless,
is he part of the Quaids that are? Is he the Dennis Quaids or the Randy Quaids? Are Dennis and Randy related?
They're brothers. And so he is the son of Dennis Quaid. I think that's right. Randy Quaid is his uncle. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the relationship.
Is Randy Quaid like super crazy now?
I thought so is Dennis. Dennis Quaid's pretty nuts now too.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah, Randy Quaid went first. He went nuts first.
Okay, that's why I knew
Dennis Quaid's pretty nuts too. So everybody's hoping that Jack Quaid doesn't follow that way because he doesn't seem to be as insane.
So far, or he's got a really good publicity manager, or one or the other. It could be one of those two things.
Who knows what's coming? But he is once again cast as an everyman in this movie Companion, and the main character is played by Sophie Thatcher, who I thought did an excellent job of this movie and was well cast. She's very, very believable physically. Some people just physically fit the role that they've been cast to play, and I felt like she was very good casting for this role. Now, this is going to be a little bit tricky because I don't want to spoil anything about this movie, and yet the poster for this movie and the bare bones description of this movie that you might see on any streaming service where you're playing it or just on the back of the DVD cover kind of gives away what isn't really meant to be a surprise exactly. All the characters are talking around it at the beginning, but it is played in the movie as a bit of a reveal, so I don't want to give anything away. That said, I'm going to, so skip ahead if you don't want to hear anything whatsoever. I'm only going to take maybe 3 minutes to do this, so I say skip ahead 3 minutes, and if Tom is talking by then, you're safe. So yeah, the absolute thing, and you can kind of guess this from the title of the movie even, is that she is an artificial life form.
She's got no eyeballs.
In the poster, I know.
In the poster, and it says, get somebody made just for you is the catchphrase. It's not that hard to figure out.
That's why it's not subtle. Like spoiler in that if you looked up anything about this movie that I'm spoiling that for you. But like many things, the way it plays out in the movie itself, it's a bit of a reveal that she is an artificial life form made to be the girlfriend. And now the company is doing it as these are therapeutic support robots, but of course, you can interact with them however you might please, and so that is more or less
it's a sex robot. Just say it, Rob.
Yep,
it's a sex robot.
What's going
That's
on.
all it is. That's
yes. Except I did appreciate, because look, that is not a brand new idea that has never been done in any movie or TV series before. But so what I did appreciate is that where this plot goes, and sort of the whole reason that Jack Quaid's character got her and has portrayed her as his girlfriend for a while and all that, that is an interesting kind of crime plot that's going on in this movie. And so I appreciated that that's the way they went with it. But they also still went with the whole, these artificial life forms that are made this way, they're not aware that they're artificial, and they believe the feelings they've been programmed to have. And so it is the whole gaining self-awareness type of storyline for her, and then, realizing that he doesn't genuinely love her back, and all the jealousy and everything that comes in with that. And so it's that whole sort of tale. So I overall quite enjoy this movie. Like I say, I enjoyed the novelty of it. Wasn't just strictly about artificial life form gaining sentience. It's like there's this whole little crime thing that's going on with this story. I enjoyed the performances. Like I say, I thought Sophie Thatcher was excellently cast. I thought Jack Quaid did a great job. I thought the supporting characters were all enjoyable, and it was all done in a crime, sci-fi, near future comedy type of feel to it, but with
comedy, huh?
Yeah, but with some violence and negative stuff thrown in there as well. But the thing that I didn't love about this movie is that it definitely, by the end of it, I guess it's not fair to say that they're outright saying this applies to everyone who might ever get an artificial companion. But in terms of the only characters in this movie whom we meet who have artificial companions, it's like it does portray them as, well, if you're the sort of person who ends up with an artificial companion, there must be something wrong with you. That's the route that it goes down in here. And I don't,
just that you're rich. It feels like it's that you're rich.
I don't know that I love that. I don't. And it's kind of like, like you've got an artificial companion who's too good looking for you, but that's the only way you could get somebody that good looking. And if you're a normal guy, but you end up with an artificial companion, it's like, well, you must have something deep and dark and awful about you to go there. I don't know, so I mean, okay, to be fair to the movie, they're only saying about the characters that we actually see in the movie, but at the same time, it kind of felt like they were making the broader point of that
therapy
in general.
Is bad?
I don't know that that's fair. That's fair. I didn't love that message. It felt a little unfair. Felt a little mean spirited. And this movie, the other criticism I had of it is, in moments it is mean spirited, and I don't particularly love that. If you have the whole thing where it was like that Cocaine Bear, right? I didn't like Cocaine Bear because it's like, the Cocaine Bear was essentially just played like the monster in a monster movie. And It's like in the monster movie where you're cheering for the monster, it's like you cheer for the monster because they give you a bunch of characters where you either don't care or you're outright cheering for them to die. And in Cocaine Bear, they gave you a bunch of characters who really didn't deserve to die. And I'm like, well, that's not any fun. I don't want to see the Cocaine Bear kill these people. That's no fun at all. And so this movie had that too, where it's like some of the stuff that's going on, I was like, oh, that's just kind of mean. And I didn't really love that. But overall, I did like this movie. I think it's worth a watch. I thought it was interesting that they took, a thing that's been done before and put a little new spin on it. And I liked the performances and I liked the actors. So there you go. I end up with a mild thumbs up to Companion.
Okay.
What did Tom watch?
Welcome back to all you that didn't want to hear Rob's take on Companion, which was basically like, it's all right. That's the short version of it.
A little bit more than all right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I spent 2 days basically watching TV almost nonstop. I cycled, napped, and watched TV. So I first thing I did was I was like, I'm gonna finish a series, a season of a series. I'm like, I've got to finish one. I've started so many. I like watched one episode and then never went back to it. I still haven't finished Daredevil. I wanted to do that. Anyways. So I went back and I watched Skeleton Crew because I really liked the first episode. I liked the aesthetic of it. I kind of like the direction it was going, the feel of it.
For those who are completely unfamiliar, this is Star Wars.
Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
Jude Law is the main actor that you will recognize in this. Of course, it's great. Jude Law is great. I did spend a lot of time looking at his head trying to figure out if that was a hairpiece. I figure he must be bald by now. It can't continually be this much. Like, he can't have that. At some point, your receding hairline just doesn't become a hairline anymore. Okay. I believe that it's got to be. But it looked perfect. I didn't see anything wrong with it.
They have really good hair and makeup these days.
There was that one superhero show that was a while back that the whole thing was like, their wigs were so bad, and it was so bad. I just remember that. Anyways, so Skeleton Crew, a bunch of kids, basically discover a spaceship on their planet, get on it, and it takes off. That's the first episode. And through them pressing buttons they're not supposed to press and all these other things. And the whole thing is the conceit of the show is they're out there in space for the first time, they're young kids. One of them is like always wanted to go to space. The other ones all have their own little things, their own little quirks. And they're trying to get home. Mm-hmm. That's what they're trying to do, is get home. And Jude Law is somebody that is sometimes helping them and sometimes not helping them do these things. And if you watch this show as an adult, like me, who's 50 plus years old, if you watch the show and said, I don't think this is very believable, and I don't like the way that this kid is doing this thing and that kid is doing that thing, and I don't understand why, they're doing it. This show was never for you. Okay. This show was 1,000,000% for middle school Tom. Oh, middle school Tom would have thought this was the best thing you've ever seen. Right. Like, he would have agreed with you that these kids are like, these kids should not be alive, because they just keep doing stuff that definitely should have killed them. Like, there's just no doubt about that. And he still would have thought it was the best thing he'd ever seen. Okay. He would have thought some of it was super funny, and he thought he would have loved this, like, the simplicity of the whole thing. Okay. They do and they do a lot of stuff that middle school and maybe even elementary school Tom would have recognized, in that today's shows a lot of times are very sort of soft-handed when it comes to people getting hurt and stuff like that. There's a lot of people getting killed in this thing. Okay. All right. But always off screen, right? You always see it from somebody, you hear the gunshot, but you don't see anything happen. You see the reactions of the kids and stuff like that. It feels very like late 80s, early 90s. I don't know if this was actually PG. Sort of thing.
It's where the PG-13 came from.
That's right.
It's not quite an R rating. They don't show it explicitly, but it's a little more than PG. Yeah.
If I have one criticism of it, and it's not much, if you remember the Goonies, there was like the one kid who kind of knew everything, right? And he was I haven't seen that movie in 30 years, but there's the one kid who kind of knew the history and was like always really looking for that treasure, right? That buried treasure or whatever it was. And therefore the kids were always kind of working together against the adults. Well, Jude Law kind of gets in there and he knows all this stuff, or a lot more than the kids do. And I kind of wanted the kids to be like the sole focus of this entire thing. Like, Kid Tom would have appreciated that a lot more. If you have children and you're like, I don't, this is definitely something they want to watch. Like, I want my 15-year-old to watch this before he gets too cool, because I think he'll love it. I really do. This has got that sort of Goonies feel to it, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Was it a cinematic masterpiece full of twists and turns and stuff that you couldn't possibly see coming? No, but it's not made for you, right? Please, can we just?
No, I'm glad a show like that exists. To be honest,
exactly.
There's a dearth of that at the moment.
There's all these 40, 50-year-old man babies on YouTube screaming about how Kathleen Kennedy is ruining their childhood because they put out something that wasn't made specifically for them, about the specific characters and the way that they want those characters to act. You're just like, this is
the way they wanted it to be, so it's bad.
This is what this is what gets new people into Star Wars, right? That's why there's people out there right now. I know you don't believe me, and I'm not talking to you, Rob, because I know you do. Yeah, no. There's people out there like, the first thing they saw was the Phantom Menace, and it's still their favorite. Yep. You need to get that through your head that it is still their favorite. The Phantom Menace is their favorite Star Wars movie because when they were young, that's the one that they saw. Sure. And that's okay. So these kids, anyways, I thought Skeleton Crew was great. Okay. Is it the cinematic masterpiece? No. But I mean, the creatures were great. The special effects were amazing. The ships were cool. And it's like everything that you think, you're like, they set it up so blatantly obvious. Like don't press this button. Like first episode, don't ever press this button because if you do, it explodes the hull. That's what they said. It explodes the hull. I'm like, they are totally gonna press that button.
You would think, yes.
No world in which that
That's
button
a little
doesn't get
Chekhov's
pressed.
gun right there for you for that not to happen.
and when they press the button, guess what? It was awesome.
Yes.
I was like, I don't know how they're going to get out of this. And they flash over to the button. I'm like, there it is.
Yeah, there. Just to flash back to Companion for a little bit. There's a Chekhov's gun type of moment going on in that one too. And I wanted to mention, if that movie had been made in the 80s or 90s, like there is no nudity whatsoever in Companion. There's a very mild little sex scene in it, but no nudity whatsoever. I'm like, movie kind of needed some nudity, like just to. Like, it's the sort of movie that should have had some, because it's an R-rated movie, but there's no nudity in it whatsoever. And I'm like, that feels like a modern thing of like the aversion to nudity in movies these days. Like, you can go overboard, but you can also like, this movie could have used some nudity, honestly.
Yeah. So anyways, Skeleton Crew, I thought it was great. I think it's not for me, but I could feel the child within me resonating with it. So I think that kids are probably right now binging this over and over again because they thought it was so cool.
Hope so.
I thought it was good. The other thing I watched was I watched Captain America: Brave New World, which Rob has not seen yet.
I haven't seen yet, so no big spoilers.
No big spoilers here. I am a huge fan of the Captain America series. I think all three of the movies are great.
Me too.
All three of the previous movies were great. So I was very excited to watch this one. I knew the reviews were sort of mixed on this, but I know that a lot of that comes from the same man babies who are on YouTube screaming about how come, you didn't figure out a way to bring Chris Evans back. I'm like, because the dude wants to eat a sandwich. Okay? Let him eat a sandwich.
I mean, I don't know about that with what he's been doing lately. Still,
I don't care. He's done playing Captain America.
Still avoiding the carbs.
Yeah. So, overall, a solid Marvel movie.
Okay.
There's just nothing wrong with it, really.
Okay.
Is it as good as the other ones? No, but the part. It's nothing to do with any of the performances or even really the writing. I don't know what it is about this movie that doesn't quite hang together as well. I think that the plot's a little too it just happens. It's just like this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, sort of thing.
That's been happening a lot in things lately.
And there's not quite the twists and turns that I wanted there to be. There's not quite the the mystery maybe that the other Captain America movies have had.
Okay.
There was not quite as, I don't know. One of the problems was I kept getting interrupted when I was watching this movie. So my wife's out of town and she's at the campsite, this scout campsite with my son, and she has intermittent internet service only in one place on the campground because she get in the internet. So when she's there, she calls me or she texts me, and so I have to drop everything I'm doing to talk to her. That happened, and then some other things happened, and I had to deal with it. But I sat there and watched the movie the entire time, but I stopped halfway through to make myself some dinner because I was starving. So that didn't really help the whole my experience with it. But so we know the new Captain America was the Falcon, so he has his. If you remember the Captain America and the Winter Soldier,
the TV series.
The TV series, there was that, and I cannot remember any of the characters' names right now. So, but he has a new Falcon guy,
right?
Who's that guy from Miami? Who I don't remember his character.
He was only in one episode of that TV show or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, but he was in there, and he is great.
Okay.
And then their chemistry, you see that chemistry that the Falcon and the old Captain America had together, kind of. Also, be right back there again, where we've got his new Falcon guy is super I just love you, man.
Oh, okay.
So I think you're awesome, and I want to be you. You know what I mean? And then of course Harrison Ford's in it, and I mean, other than the last Indiana Jones movie, which I thought was an absolute train wreck, I've never not liked Harrison Ford in things, and this is no exception. He's great. He plays a convincing president. He plays his character well, and like overall the special effects are pretty good. Okay. The KEF speakers that whomever it was sent me are amazing. And I was like, I think I'm getting way too much bass out of these things. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm afraid of how much bass I'm getting out of these things. I will tell you that, and all of us have had this experience when we're like watching a movie or a TV show and they're talking about home theater. They have speakers and you look at them like no one in their right mind would have their speakers set up this way. Well, Harrison Ford is on like a Peloton bike, right? And he's sweating and he's doing his exercise, and his assistant comes in right. This is the beginning of the scene, and he steps off of it. And he's like, "You tell my doctor that I did the whole 5 miles," and I went, "What?"
Yeah, 5 miles on a bike isn't that far. Like a 5 mile run is that's a reasonable exercise for sure. But yeah.
So I'm talking to all my cycling friends, and I'm like, the whole 5 miles. I'm like, the whole 5 miles. Like 5 miles gets me to my ride. Like that's how long it takes me to get to the ride.
Harrison Ford is a significantly older man than you, Tom. So
I mean,
allow
that's like 10 minutes on the bike.
Right.
Let's be honest. I mean, it's not that long, but the number 5, like 5 miles, sounds like a lot to people who don't cycle ever.
It should have been a run.
It should have been. I just don't think Harrison Ford is like, listen, I'm not running. Do you know how old I am? I'm not getting on a treadmill. I'm not even going to pretend to run, because if we have to do 2 takes,
or like a 5 mile swim, that's significant for sure.
Anyway, so I was just because the same. I was talking with a friend of mine today, and she said that she went to go see F1, and she's like, I think I would have enjoyed this movie a lot more if I knew more about F1.
Okay,
I'm like.
Or maybe not, because apparently it's not terribly accurate to how F1 works whatsoever.
She felt like she was missing out because she didn't know the rules of F1. I'm like, I don't know the rules of F1 either. I said, and then we started talking about this, and she's like, yeah. I'm like, they have to. There's a fine line. They have to balance it between, saying something that sounds impressive enough to normal people, and even at the risk of like alienating like the minority who's going to be like 5 miles, like everybody else,
or not, because I mean, how many Fast and Furious movies have there been? And apparently, everyone who made those movies has no idea how a car works. So,
I'll tell you what, they have like 47 gear.
They sure
shift
do.
Boxes. They're always shifting. Anyway, so overall, solid movie. Okay. I certainly enjoyed it. There was like there is the moment. Now we all know that Red Hulk is in here, right? There's no big surprise.
That was in the previews a lot.
That was in the previews.
Can't spoil that
a lot. Can't spoil that. So there's one moment when the new Captain America is standing in front of him, and he's like, "Just let's talk. Just remember this and remember that, and look where you are, and all these other things." And he's like, "Yeah, that's not going to work," and it just goes back to fighting. I'm like, exactly. Stop trying to talk this man down. He's a Hulk. You're going to start fighting. So it was, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Okay.
And certainly, like I said, is it the best Captain America movie? No. Is it the best Marvel movie? No. Is it the worst one? Also no.
Okay.
It's solid. It's a solid movie. I would give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10, I guess. Somewhere in that range.
All 4 things that the hosts of AVRant watched this week, we say go ahead and watch them. Nothing we're telling you to avoid. Yeah.
Nothing. Yeah. And I think your kids should watch Skeleton Crew. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to AVRant, find our shows, our show notes, our links for all the products and or articles that we'll be referring to, as well as our Flickr album, so you can follow along with any pictures that we'll be looking at as we're talking to you and answering your questions. You can go to facebook.com/AVRant podcast, youtube.com/AVRant to see our live recordings. The Flickr album pictures will all be in that, so you can just glance over if you like. Let's see here. I want to thank our listeners. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His socials is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and send us a PayPal donation. Gurinder did that this week, so thank you very much, Gurinder.
Yeah, Gurinder, thanks so much for the PayPal donation. Very nice of you.
If you want to be a monthly supporter, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast to join the 131 patrons that we currently have every month. A little bit of money comes, well, however much you tell them comes from you, and most of it comes to us. So thank you to our 131 patrons.
Yeah, that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, so a big thank you to our 131 patrons over there.
Okay, I have clicked off accidentally, so there we go. If you can't support us financially, we understand. Support us in some other ways, and we will mention you here. So Rohan sent a Movies Anywhere code for me to test out for him. I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but I will do it probably during this podcast, to be honest with you.
I had a feeling like maybe you already had those ones tested before, but regardless...
I will test them. I will test them.
Regardless, Rohan, thank you for sending in the Movies Anywhere code.
Yeah, and we got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from Henry, Joe, Greg, Andrew, who says, sorry, Rob and Andrew cannot fight each other, but being both Canadian and all, sorry. Yeah, so many sorries in the emails that went between these two that I was CC'd on. I have not said that many sorries legitimately in a month.
We were playing it up, Tom. We were playing it up.
The amount of sorries, I was like, my lord. Does it just insert the Canadians the Canadian voice to text just insert sorries every like
pretty
fourth
close
word?
No, we're the ones where if we're walking along the street and we're looking at our phone, not really paying attention, we bump into a pole, we apologize to the pole. Oh, sorry. It's just a reflex.
Rohan James, who's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club, he also echoes my comments about nobody wants this. His wife and he have really enjoyed it. Stefan, who says greetings from Belgium, he enjoys the full 2 hours every time, including the non-AV related talk, and Sasi. So we've got notes of gratitude from Henry, Joe, Greg, Andrew, Rohan, James, Stefan, and Sasi. Thank you for thanking us.
Yes, indeed. I'll say the names one more time. We got Henry, Joe, Greg, Andrew, Rohan, James, Stefan, and Sasi. Thank you very much for those notes of gratitude and encouragement. We really appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right, in the news, HSU's new MFL/-6 speaker, which is multifunction loudspeaker with 6.5-inch woofer, which I always appreciate. If you're going to do names that are stupid,
there.
Yeah, do one that's an acronym that makes sense. Has now officially been released. It's priced at $279 each, plus $35 shipping per speaker. So technically, under $300 each, as they said a few weeks ago. As we previously detailed, the front face of the MFL-6 is angled at 30 degrees, so even if you mount it flush to the wall, using any of its 3 pairs of integrated keyhole mounts is always towed in to aim at the listening position. The 1-inch aluminum tweeter is mounted inside of a constant directivity horn that was designed by Don Keeley?
I am not actually sure. I'll go with Keel.
Keele. I'm going to go with Keeley. For even and uniform off-axis response, if you choose to stand it up on top of something, it comes with feet that elevate it enough to give the down-firing port sufficient clearance. And if you choose to use it horizontally as a center, the angled face gives it a built-in upward or downward tilt. And with the port now firing out the side, the feet can be removed and replaced with plugs for a more finished look. The port can be sealed with the included port plug if desired. Okay. I thought it was a slot port, but maybe it's not.
It's a round port on the bottom.
I guess I just envisioned it as being a slot. The specs rated at 8 ohms nominal with 250 watt power handling, a 60 hertz minus 2 dB extension, although HSU hasn't included a sensitivity rating yet. Each MFL-6 weighs 13 pounds, and if you order pairs, they are, of course, mirrored so that both speakers are facing inward towards listening position. So if you're just going to order one, I guess you need to know which side you want the feet to be on. Because
you'll have to request. I guess they probably build them in pairs, so it's like as people order 5 or 3 intending to have a center, like, well, one of you gets it poured on the left, other one gets it poured on the right, unless you make a request.
That's interesting. I don't like that. I don't like having a built-in angled speaker face. I just don't. I understand, and there's nothing wrong with what they're saying about any of this. All the things that they have done in order to make this thing, I just don't like it. I don't want it. I don't want that to exist. I want things. I don't want it to be straightforward so that I can,
I mean, they're taking a wedge shape. It's just that instead of the wedge being up and down, it's side to side.
I just don't like it. I just think that from the perspective of somebody that has to explain things to people, I'm just like, oh, please don't do this to me.
Plus, these
it feels like a personal attack.
These are not teeny tiny. That is a 6.5-inch woofer. It's 13 pounds. So you're going to want some wall anchors. You're not going to just want to tap a little nail into the wall and hang it on that. So yeah, you got to be a little bit careful and know what you're doing with these.
Yeah, it just feels like a personal attack to, that is directed directly at me because of the fact that they know that I will absolutely hate having to explain what direction. Like, okay, now you have to figure out how to make them face directly forward.
Right.
What?
That's going to be a challenge.
That is going to be a challenge. Okay, let me send this email real quick. Okay. Now, the HDMI forum has now officially released a new HDMI 2.2 specification, which they are not going to let you call it that, but that's what it is. Mm-hmm. All of the details were already shared back in CES in January, but with this official release, manufacturers can now begin implementing the new connectivity standard that allows for up to 96 gigabytes of bandwidth, double that of HDMI 2.1.
That's gigabits per second.
Gigabits.
So divide that by 8 to get gigabytes.
The HDMI forum has never wanted the specification number. I can't believe you actually wrote this down like that after I said it. The HDMI forum has never wanted the specification number to be used for marketing or as an often inaccurate shorthand for included features. So this time they are focusing on the new Ultra96 branding. Mm-hmm. Ultra96 is just one word, by the way. It's the 96 and Ultra slapped
all together. No space.
No space. HDMI ports on devices should be labeled as Ultra96 rather than 2.0 or 2.1 or 4K or 8K as we've typically seen until now. Because, how could that possibly be confusing?
I mean, I kind of like seeing the Ultra96 on there. It's it does tell you, it's very clear. It looks noticeably different from anything that came before. I don't mind that part.
However, similar to HDMI 2.1, which could support bandwidth up to 48 gigabytes per second. Bits, okay.
Little b.
But I always get those things. I don't know why today my brain has decided that I can't remember which one is which. 48 gigabits per second, but was often limited to 40 or even 32. Ultra96 ports can potentially be limited to 64 or 80 or support the full 96, but they'll all be labeled Ultra96. So.
Yes. HDMI was like,
good luck.
We have to be confusing. We're not allowed. We're HDMI. We have this whole new thing, this whole new branding, which actually is kind of catchy and easy to understand.
Why wouldn't they just say, hey, you can label it what it is, not Ultra 96, Ultra 64, Ultra 80.
Right.
Why can't they just label it
nope.
what it actually does?
They're all Ultra 96.
Or maybe it's Ultra 96 /80 or /64.
I mean, they just want the forum people to have something to talk about. They're being, they're being benevolent and giving them something.
With the added bandwidth comes support for higher resolutions at higher frame rates, 16K 60, so 16K, 60 frames per second.
Yep.
That's a full 444 is possible with 8K 120 or 4K 240. And if you're willing to accept some chroma subsampling or display stream compression, Ultra 96 can support 8K 240 or 4K 480. So get those extremely expensive graphic cards ready.
That's right.
Naturally, there's also the new Ultra96 certified HDMI cables, which should be hitting the market in Q3 or Q4 of this year. Once again, there will be a hologram and a QR code so that you can verify the certification. You can get them right now from Temu.
I'm sure. They'll even have a hologram and a QR code. It won't be legitimate, but they will have them.
They'll be on there. It'll look holographic in the picture. Yeah. In real life, it's less holographic. Perhaps the feature we're looking forward to most, though, is the latency indication protocol, or LIP.
Fantastic
HDMI giving you lip. The HDMI forum has actually recognized the frequent lip sync issues with today's HDMI implementations, especially the so-called multi-hop systems that include a switch or an AV receiver or a soundbar in between a source device and the display. Lip is supposed to fix all that.
We have supreme confidence over here. Supreme confidence.
This is my this is the very sad laugh of somebody who knows that it's definitely not going to work, and it's only. All right, I'm going to tell you, I have no idea, but if you hear us say in about 6 months. So the best thing to do is just turn lip off.
Ah, right. Yeah. Don't be
Do
shocked.
not be surprised.
Don't be surprised.
Okay, this comes via Carl. The Star Cinema Grill has just opened their newest location in Richmond, Texas. Yay. I don't even know where that is. I mean, I know it's in Texas. And to make their flagship theater stand out, it uses the largest Samsung Onyx micro LED display in the Western Hemisphere at 46 feet wide. Their Onyx P3.3 display is only the second in the world at that size. And the inaugural movie being shown on it is F1.
Yeah.
Yay.
I just thought that was kind of cool, though. We got micro LED displays showing up in North America, Samsung Onyx, and they've got the biggest in the world down there in Richmond, Texas. Good for them.
There you go. Good for them. I don't know where that is still. Where is that? Do we know where that is?
Texas.
Texas is not small.
It is not.
Comments from our listeners. Infinite Gary, for anyone who wanted to read the legal document filings that are publicly available in that Digital Trends versus Caleb Denison case, Gary used his skills as a retired paralegal to find the relevant links and files, so we'll share those in our show notes. You can check those out. Good luck reading through that.
Yeah, thank you to Infinite Gary for digging that up. I wasn't sure where to look, so he has provided the link. And yeah, this is like full publicly available stuff. It's not spilling any secrets or something like that. Freedom of information and all that. So yeah, this is a publicly available link with the legal documents. It is all written in legal speak, so don't expect, use your AI summary, I guess. How could that possibly go wrong?
How could that possibly work? Every time you use that, one fish dies.
Right.
Like Definitely. They just go into the ocean and spear a fish and sacrifice it to the AI gods. Nathan has heard us mention several times how Kaleidescape's disc-to-digital discount system only works with 1080p Blu-rays, not Ultra HD Blu-rays, and officially, that is true. But Kaleidescape owners have posted on forums about being able to successfully use Ultra HD Blu-ray discs for the digital-to-disc program in many cases. Naturally, this requires a USB optical drive that's capable of reading Ultra HD Blu-ray discs. It is not yet an officially supported method by Kaleidescape, but if your USB optical drive successfully reads a disc while plugged into a Kaleidescape player, it works most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's worth a shot. Hey, it's great.
Yes.
I think it should work. I don't know.
And I'm sure it's the, noting that there are a disc or two here or there that haven't read and worked properly, that Kaleidescape has not made it official support for that reason, I'm sure. But I think it'll come eventually because they know that, especially now that we're getting more and more Ultra HD Blu-rays that you buy that don't come with a 1080p Blu-ray in the package anymore. They're going to have to move in that direction, and I think they will.
I think they will too. Yeah, it's very important that they do so.
That's good to know. That's very good to know because there definitely can be cases where you don't have the 1080p Blu-ray version handy, but you do have the Ultra HD Blu-ray. So as long as you got an optical drive that can read it, give it a shot.
Greg just wanted to share a very positive customer support experience with TCL. He has owned his 98-inch QM851G TV for less than a year now. He knows that during bright scenes, where most of the screen was white, the TV would emit an audible hum and whining sound. It's like, it's too bright.
Yeah.
Looking through the forums, he discovered he was not alone, so he contacted TCL to see if any sort of servicing or fix was available. Without any fuss at all, they straight up cut him a check for the full price that he paid for the TV after he provided them with the purchase receipt. They said there is no remaining stock of that model, so they cannot replace it, and they said there's no repair that will fix the issue. But they gave him all of his money back, and he doesn't even have to return the TV. You just have to live with the whining.
That's right.
The same thing's true of my kids. I just have to live with the whining. They're much less whiny now that they're not around as much. They're now starting to realize, hey, wait a second, cooking's hard.
Right.
Dad, how do I make this again? My son asked how to make chicken schnitzel, which is not what we call it in this house, but that's what everybody else knows as breaded and fried chicken cutlets, basically. Right, yeah. And I was like, I taught him, and then he went back to his little apartment and realized that, first of all, a single person should never shop at Sam's. Club.
Okay.
But he did. And he bought a Sam's Club size of chicken breast. And then he says he can only cook like 1 or 2 at a time because of the size of his pan. So it took him like 6 hours.
Oh my gosh.
To cook all the chicken. I'm like, did you freeze some of it? He goes, oh. Okay.
Learning life skills all the way along,
We're getting there.
Yes.
Anyway, so they give him back all of his money, and he doesn't have to return the TV. It's kind of crazy, but he can buy a whole new 98-inch TV now if he wants to. So a shout out to TCL. That's
yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have guessed. I'll put it to you that way.
Of note, he was still within the 1-year manufacturer warranty. So that, I think, is playing a part here. But yeah, that's not what I would expect any company to do. Although I guess if there's honestly no resolution that they can offer, I mean, I suppose the only thing they could do is replace it with a newer model that is in stock.
Right, that's what you would think they would do.
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah, that would be the about the only other thing they could do.
The other ones whine too, and they just don't want to admit that they all whine like that. You're sitting too close. All you people who listen to AVRant and get your field of view correctly, you're sitting too dang close to our TVs.
Well, I mean, heck, my Pioneer Kuro, you turn that to a full widescreen and it would buzz. I'd hear that buzz coming out of the front of the panels. So a little bit of that going on. But yeah, I mean, honestly, he's going to have to use some of that money to dispose of that 98-inch TV if that's the route he decides to go, because that's not the easiest thing to just, pick up and carry out of your room. 98-inch TV.
All right, questions. Miguel. First up, Miguel thanked us for answering his questions regarding what it actually means for a speaker to be flat and how audible it is when a speaker is not flat, all within the context of Miguel being blind, so he can't just look at that graph and understand it in that way. Mm-hmm. Now he has some more questions for us. He currently uses a Yamaha TSR 700 receiver, which is a Costco exclusive version of the RX V6A model. There are things he likes about it and a few things he does not like about it. So he has been considering making a change over to a Denon receiver. And to that end, he bought he was not thinking about it, he did it. To that end, he bought and returned a Denon S670H just to get some first-hand experience with it, but it too had pluses and minuses. I think that's going to be the case with every product out there, but maybe not. The major plus for the Yamaha is that its accessibility features are excellent. He can mirror its web interface onto his Windows computer, and the way everything is laid out is super intuitive for how his screen reader relays all of the information and settings options to him. It states the current volume level right away, and it does so relative to reference volume, and you can change the volume right away, which is, of course, the most common thing you might want to do. Following that, you can tab through columns to get to all of the other settings. They're all laid out in a logical order that he really appreciates. Also, the application has never crashed on him. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it doesn't get any better than that, because I know Denon's interfaces for people who can see.
Yeah, exactly.
Seem to be created by people who can't, so I don't know what to tell you about that. So compared to that, the Denon's web interface was a letdown. Theirs is very basic, essentially just a copy of the Denon remote app on your phone, and you have to swipe a few times just to get to where you can change the volume. And when it reads out the current volume level, it's at a percentage, so you don't know exactly where you are relative to the reference volume. Mm-hmm. And even though Miguel is blind, cannot look at graphs, he still likes to be able to take measurements to confirm what he is hearing. And trying to control individual speaker settings in the Denon's web interface is a royal pain. He's being very kind here compared to how relatively easy it is with the Yamaha. Now, granted, he's lived with the Yamaha much longer than his trial with the Denon, but something as immediate as how to access the volume control works in the app or the web interface, that's a day-to-day thing that isn't going to get any more convenient on the Denon unless they make significant changes on their end, which I'm going to go on a limb and say that they are not going to do that.
They're still using the 2016 interface, so, I mean, they're due, but at the same time.
They're really committed to that,
to
that black screen with white text. So, whatever. So, do we have any insight about other brands that might give him a better experience than what Denon offers in terms of screen reader accessibility? And for context, as we'll get into with the second question coming up, he's hoping for a better room correction program than YPOW. So,
yeah.
I mean, so what are the other options out there, right? So we've got Denon and Marantz is essentially the same thing.
They're going to be
the
same.
That there's going to be any difference there.
No.
So those are out. You've tried them, and I agree with you 1,000,000%.
Yep.
There's if you have a hard time getting volume changed, I wouldn't even. That's like the doorknob doesn't work.
Right.
I guess I can't move into this house.
Like not not outright hard, but just not as convenient as you would want it to be. And the Yamaha is exactly the way he wants it to be. So it's like, yep, I get you. That alone would be enough for
that
me
would be
right
enough.
there.
And I would agree with that. So what would be my suggestion? So the other brand out there really is Onkyo, right? Yeah. That's the other big brand. And I don't know what their accessibility issues are in there.
I mean, it's tough for me because I'm not using it in that way day to day. I'm not using a screen reader and interacting with it that way. And even if I were, I wouldn't necessarily know exactly what to focus on as something that needs improvement versus something that, well, this is okay. It'd be nice if it were done a different way, but this is perfectly acceptable. Like I don't have enough experience using it in that way to say for sure. What I can say is we had another listener who is blind before who mentioned that he always preferred Onkyo over Denon at the time for a very similar reason, that using the screen reader on the Onkyo's app interface was significantly better than Denon. But I recall, and this is not 100% perfect memory of it, but I do recall him mentioning that at some point Onkyo changed their app and their web interface, and he was mildly disappointed because he thought they made it a little bit worse than the older version that in his opinion was better. It was better before, and when they updated it, they actually made it a little bit worse and harder to use for someone who's blind and relying on a screen reader to help them get through it. Not as bad as Denon's. Still thought Onkyo's was superior to Denon's as far as usability that way, but that it wasn't quite as good as the way it used to be. So all of that, I mean, that's secondhand information. That is recall on my part that might not be completely accurate, but I do have a memory of that being the case. So this is another one where, I mean, you were willing to buy and return the Denon to try it for yourself. I think it would be reasonable to buy and return an Onkyo because you might discover, and also, I don't know, they might have made further changes to their app since my memory of that, because that was several years ago at this point, and maybe it got better again with the Onkyo. I honestly don't know at this point, but that might be worth a try. The only hesitancy I have with that is, one, I don't think you'd want to use Onkyo's Accu EQ. It is way worse than YPOW, but that means the good version that they have, which is Dirac, first of all, you have to go to a more expensive model to get Dirac on an Onkyo. You have to go to at least the NR7100, because the NR6100 and lower just have Accu EQ, and they don't have Dirac. But the NR7100 and higher, they all have Dirac. But I would be shocked out of my wits if using a screen reader with the Dirac interface was at all intuitive, because I have full vision. I need glasses to see properly, but I have full vision, and going through that Dirac interface when I can see everything that's on the screen is still a little bit painful. And I can't imagine doing that interface blind would be intuitive and easy to use. I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I can't envision that that's the case, just knowing what the Dirac interface looks like when I can see it. There are some very small little buttons and a lot of sliders to adjust, and I can't imagine adjusting sliders via a screen reader, and when you can't see where the slider ended up, I can't envision that being the best interface for someone who's blind. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem that way to me. So all of that leads me to believe that your best choice here might be to stick with Yamaha, but just to, unfortunately, spend a bit more money, but go to a higher model number in Yamaha's lineup that has the better version of YPOW. Because at the moment, you don't have the highest version of YPOW. You have the version that's a little more limited in what it can do. It doesn't take as many measurement positions. It doesn't use the fur filters that can be more precise. It doesn't go as down deep into the bass for where it's correcting. But there are higher tier versions of YPOW that do those things, but you have to pay for the more expensive Yamaha models to get them. But I think overall that might be your best solution here, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I don't see. I mean, so what would if you just came to me and you said, I like my Yamaha, but I want to get better rim correction, right? I might suggest getting something like a Dirac, an interface separate that you could go in between your Yamaha and if you had pre-outs or whatever. What's it called?
For
like
a mini DSP,
like a mini DSP. Yeah. My brain just absolutely forgot.
Yeah, there's
mini DSP
the 8-channel mini DSP where you would go in between something that has a full set of pre-outs and a full set of separate amplifiers. That's the only way to implement
your
it
Yamaha
that way.
does not have.
No.
Your Yamaha does not have that. But you could maybe use it to do the subwoofers. You know what I mean? Or your subwoofer or however many you had or something like that. But again, like Rob said, you have to use, Room EQ Wizard and DRAC, and Lord knows how that experience is going to be for you.
It's definitely tough enough when you can see the full interface and use those sliders with a mouse. So yeah.
But he does say he's comfortable taking measurements, so he must be using something to do that. So maybe you could do that if you wanted to. But I agree with Rob. I think that you just basically get yourself a better Yamaha.
Yeah.
And use the Wipeout with RSC.
Yeah. That's the reflected sound control and the multi-point measurement.
Yeah.
Those are the features to look for. And
even if you're not using all the speakers, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. What you're going for here is the better room correction.
Yeah.
Now, is this going to make a night and day difference? I don't know what your room is like.
I mean, there's one section that he's going to mention in his second question where I believe it will. So
okay, good. Yeah. Let's go on to the second question. We'll talk about it there. So as we alluded to, his complaints about his Yamaha all have to do with Wipeout. He feels as though the fairly basic version of Wipeout that comes with the TSR 700 didn't do a particularly great job EQing his speakers, and it really didn't seem to EQ the bass much at all.
That's the thing. The bass part, that can be improved.
It left him with swings of plus or minus 8 dB from 120 hertz down to 20 hertz, whereas his very first run of Odyssey on the Denon immediately flattened that out to plus or minus 5 dB, which was definitely audible to him. So, the manual EQ settings in the TSR 700 are rather limited and not fully variable parametric EQ, since the starting frequencies are fixed, so you can't vary them at all. And lastly, he wants curves of equal loudness, and the Yamaha provides those via Wipeout volume, but it seems to have a lower limit of minus 30 on the volume, the master volume dial. Anything below that volume doesn't actually boost the bass anymore, and the surrounds don't ever get any louder either. So, again, with Odyssey, had the advantage here, continuing to work below 30, minus 30 using dynamic EQ and boosting the surrounds along with the bass in order to keep everything audible. So is there a way you could add some sort of third-party device to create his own dynamic EQ that would work below 30, minus 30 along with his Yamaha? No. Not really.
But what you could do there is manually lower all of the trim levels on your speakers. Now, that means that when you turn the master volume to 0 dB, it is no longer at full reference volume. You would actually have to turn the master volume above 0 dB to get to full reference volume, but that allows you a little bit of a trick where the master volume readout is going to be higher, right? It's going to be above minus 30, but because you've manually lowered all of the trim levels equally, it's going to be at the quieter volume that you actually wanted. So that's just a little bit of a trick that you could play on the system to do that. And that is going to be the same even if you get to a more expensive Yamaha receiver. But if you get to the more expensive Yamaha receiver, the ones that have multi-point measurement and RSC, it is going to do a better job with the bass. Because the limited version of Wipeout that you have right now, it cuts off at, 32 hertz or something like that? It just doesn't do any correction below there. So it's not surprising that you had swings of plus minus 8 dB, because it's not even doing correction below a certain point. But the higher version of Wipeout does.
Right.
Yeah.
1 second here. Sorry. I clicked off for a moment. Now I can't find my tab. So as far as third-party device, like I said, the mini DSP or something like that, but again, you're going to be stuck with dealing with that. And overall, do we think he should keep his TSR 700 and work around this Wipeout limitation somehow, or should he change to some other receiver, but then have to work around whatever different shortcomings it has? Well, yeah, like Rob said, the better Yamaha is the way to go. Yeah. I think I agree. Yeah. I do want to verify, or I want you to verify before you do so. Just remember that the cherry on top of your home theater experience is the room correction. Mm-hmm. If your room has not been treated, if your room is highly reflective, if it's open to other parts of the house, if it's only in a corner or shoved over somewhere and you're hoping to keep the bass in there somehow, the fact that you felt you heard that Odyssey did a better job, I think you can at least get that level of performance with the better Yamaha.
Well, because I mean, we both, Tom and Rob, we both have the experience of the lower end version of Wipeout. We're like, definitely leaves room for improvement. Whereas the full highest end version of it with the RSC with the multi-point correction, we're like, that's almost on par with Odyssey. It's right there. They're neck and neck. So given everything, I think that makes the most sense. Price-wise, too, honestly, because like I say, if you went to the Onkyo side, you'd have to go higher up in their lineup to get something that's better than AccuEQ. And AccuEQ, in my opinion, is worse than even the basic version of Wipeout that you've already got. So no matter what you do, unfortunately, we are saying that you're spending a bit more money than you might have had in mind ultimately. But to get what you're talking about, sometimes that's what it takes. And I think it would be worth it in this case.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
If you're hearing a difference, then I think that you will continue to hear a difference, and I think it'll be positive for you. Zeke and his wife enjoy playing video games together. Two-player games that allow for couch co-op are their favorites, but that isn't the most common type of games these days. So Zeke has been hoping to find a way to fake the feeling of local co-op by using two gaming PCs and playing together online with his wife. But they don't want to look at two separate screens. They want to have both displays showing up split screen style on their large projection screen, just like a local co-op game would do. He currently has a 5.1.2 speaker setup using a Denon X3400H receiver and an Epson LS12000 projector. They've got their two gaming PCs along with a PS5 and an NVIDIA Shield that can do local game streaming from one of the PCs if needed. Ideally, they'd be able to show two 4K 120 signals with audio from both of them simultaneously side by side at the same image size, but all on one screen through his Epson projector. No. I think is the short version of this. Like, I don't even know, but I don't even know how that would work.
That's the ideal.
But if that simply isn't possible, they could make do with two 4K 60 images and the audio from just being from one of them.
I'm sorry, my nose that is possible. Yeah. That's going to be where
from the research he's done. He's thinking he needs an HDMI multi-viewer or a video wall controller. But since he isn't familiar with those, he wanted to check with us. What do we say? Mixing two video and audio sources onto one screen through one display is crazy. I mean, that's just
obviously we see that done in professional AV, commercial AV. It's done all the time.
Yeah. But I've seen, I've actually seen displays, and this, I've seen setups at like CES and CEDIA where they have a 3D display where you use the shutter glasses, right?
Sure.
So you've got the same screen showing alternating images of the two different sources that are happening at the same time, and then everybody wears headphones. The two people wear headphones and they wear the glasses. So what they're not seeing a 3D image; they're seeing one half of the image, basically, because it's flashing the two. It'll be flashing 120, but each person's getting 60. But their glasses are synced up so that both eyes are seeing the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's one way that this technically works. But I mean, that's like super high end stuff that was just like a demo that I've never seen actually work in person.
Yeah, Epson does have, on their professional side, Epson Professional, they have projectors that would actually do almost exactly what you're asking for, in that they have a picture by picture, not just a picture in picture, where one of the images is considerably smaller and taking up a corner of the image. They have a picture by picture where you could plug two separate sources into two different HDMI inputs on the projector itself, and it will display those two images side by side on the same screen at the same time. But unfortunately, the Epson LS12000 doesn't have that functionality. It's reserved definitely for their Epson Pro type of projectors. So you're absolutely right. A multi-viewer, an HDMI multi-viewer is the thing you're looking for. And most of the professional ones are $750, $800 and up. Not exactly the cheapest solution, but O-Ray, which does a lot of these sort of video processing, splitting, combining type of things for the consumer market, I'm going to point you to, because they have multiple different of these Matrix multi-viewers, but I'm going to point you to the one that's actually 4 in, 2 out, and you're going to go, why the heck do I need one that's 4 in, 2 out when I really only want 2 in, 1 out? And the reason I'm saying that is because they do have ones that are 2 in, 1 out, but unfortunately they don't retain the geometry. So you will have 2 horizontally squished, everybody looking tall and skinny images side by side if you use the 2 in, 1 out version. Like, I don't know if that's what you want to do. It does cost less because the 4 in, 2 out is $350. Not super cheap, but less than half the price of the professional multi-viewers that can do this sort of thing. But what you could do with the 4 in, 2 out is, it'll be a bit weird. What you'll have is 2 1080p images side by side, and then you'll probably need to use some lens shift and blanking on your Epson, but it does have those features. So you're essentially taking, each of your computer images is only taking up a quarter of the screen, but that allows you to retain the proper geometry and have, both of them side by side in the upper 2 corners or the bottom 2 corners, and the other 2 1080p images are just blank. But I'm thinking that when you're playing, you want the geometry to stay correct. Now that's going to be at 60 hertz, so you're going to have 2 separate 1080p source images at 60 hertz. You're only going to be hearing the audio from one of them. So, I mean, that's a lot of downgrades from what you were talking about. But otherwise, you're warping the geometry to do this, or spending way more money to get a commercial-grade multi-viewer that could do this type of processing. You're not going to get 2 side-by-side 4K 120 images. That's not going to happen. Maybe someday in the future, but right now, that's not really going to be an option.
Right. Yeah. All right. Henry. As we are well aware at this point, Henry was considering getting a Kaleidescape. Henry, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't. If you had asked me which of our viewers was looking for a Kaleidescape, I couldn't name a single one of them. So apparently I am well aware. Did not know.
We've talked about Henry's trials and tribulations in the making decision for a while, but that's all put aside.
Think of me as your AV goldfish. The minute this podcast stops happening, everything that happened during the podcast is gone. Nothing, no retention whatsoever. I'm like the retrograde amnesia
Pretty
guy.
Close. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
short-term
just all
memory
gone.
loss.
Anyways, he was considering getting a Kaleidescape, but now he's firmly decided against it. But he did like the slickness of the interface. And at one point, I mentioned how for the price of Kaleidescape, you get a NAS and an NVIDIA Shield instead, and use the remaining difference to pay in price to pay someone else to rip all of his Ultra HD Blu-rays for him. He didn't really take that seriously at first, but to his surprise, he found someone in his local area who is more or less providing that exact service. He can take his discs to them, and for $12 per disc.
Yeah, that's the part that gives me pause, but yeah, $12 a disc.
They will make a one-to-one backup files on a hard drive for him. They even provide the hard drive for a price, of course, and said that it can work with either Zidoo or Revolution. It's the Revolution, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, so first up, Henry recalls Rob saying he wouldn't feel great about recommending a Revolution system, given that they seem to have essentially been rebranding the Zapiti, which went under a while back. Is that still the case today? Is Zidoo the way to go here? I think that is the way to. I don't know, Rob.
I mean, I feel better about recommending Zidoo at the moment. One other reason for it, aside from just the whole business dealing side of things, is that Revolution relies on a server-based system. Like when you want to access your library and your poster wall of all of the files that you've uploaded, that is all done on Revolution servers. You have to have an active internet connection. The nice side of that is that when you add additional players, or if you change players, or if you make a change to your system, then all of your organization is stored on their servers. the positive side of it. But the negative side of it is you always have to have that internet connection. If you ever don't have your internet connection, you can't access your own poster wall. You can still get to the files through just a regular file browser in a Revolution. It's not that it's totally non-functional. But I just prefer that the Zidoo is really just an all-in-one standalone, doesn't even have to be connected to the internet once you've downloaded the metadata the first time. It can just run all on its own. And they're just sort of the more standalone company, and they cost less. I like that they cost less. So I would recommend Zidoo over Revolution right now. But that's my take.
Okay. On Zidoo's website, they have a whole bunch of different player models listed, but they're apparently to currently be on the 8K series, going by what is readily available to purchase on Amazon. And even though most of the YouTube videos are about the expensive flagship UHD 8000 model, the ones you can buy from Amazon are the Z9X 8K and the Z30 Pro and the Z3000 Pro.
Yep.
If you look hard enough, you can still find some of the older models too. So which would be the model to get? He's sort of drawn to the form factor of the Z3000 Pro, which basically looks like a normal home theater player device, but it costs more than the Z30 Pro, which is smaller but claims essentially the same specs at a lower price. And then the Z9X 8K is definitely the least expensive, but sort of looks like a streaming box. More than it looks like a disc player. It doesn't have anywhere to put a hard drive into it the way the Z30 and the Z3000 do. So what's the right model for him to get, Rob?
This is a little bit tough because it sort of depends on your use case and exactly what you want to do. I totally understand the appeal of getting a player where it's got a normal hard drive bay. So you're talking a regular, desktop hard drive that you can plug right into the Zidoo. It's all in one. You need no external cables or wires unless you want to connect an Ethernet connection to it. And I totally get the appeal of that. I personally find it difficult to justify the price point of the Z3000. Basically the only genuinely useful thing that it has there is 2 HDMI outputs, one of which is audio only. So if you, for some reason, really, really need that, you've got a considerably older AV receiver versus your television, then maybe so. But even there, I'm like paying all that extra money versus the Z30 Pro. So I end up sort of favoring the Z30 Pro unless, if really all you want to do is dip your toe in and you want to spend as little as possible, I would get the Z9X. It is $200 less than the other options. For that amount of money, you can buy a nice external USB hard drive and have a whole bunch of storage space and everything for the exact same total price. But obviously, I've chit-chatted with Henry via email. It sounds like he wants the, little bit slicker, not as many wires, not visible antennas and all that. So for that reason, I think the Z30 Pro is probably the right choice for him. It's all the features he wants. It's nice and compact. It's everything all built into one unit. And the Z30 is the way I would go for Henry.
All right. He figured you might get the hard drive from the person who does the ripping for $12 a pop and have them rip his top 20 movies for him as a starting point. But going forward, what would actually be involved if he wants to rip his own discs? His computer is a Mac laptop, and when he first downloaded MKV, just to take a look at it, merely trying to install it gave him an error message. So, is that how things are going to be? Is every step of this going to be kind of fiddly and annoying? Because he is not the sort of person that enjoys tweaking things and fighting through settings in software. He pays a custom installer to program his universal remote control system for him, and he wants to spend what little free time he has just enjoying his setup and relaxing, not tinkering with his equipment and dealing with temperamental software. He has done some reading, and he's seen a particular optical drive, the Asus BW16D1HT.
Rolls right off the tongue.
It's $129. Mentioned enough times that he'd be willing to buy one. But what is the full and complete scenario going to be actually if he wants to rip Ultra HD Blu-rays to his Mac laptop himself? So I fully understand where this dude is coming from.
Yes.
I get this. Yeah. And people who are like, well, it's just no big deal. You just do this and that. Listen, it's okay not to want to do those things, number one. And it's okay to value your time enough that you would rather pay somebody. That's what we can all do everything. I hate to break it to you. You could build your own house. You didn't do it, though, did you? Right? But you could. You could watch YouTube videos. You could practice. You could trial and error that stuff, and you could build a house, and it will probably not pass whatever regulations are in the area.
Certainly learn to do minor car repairs. You can definitely learn to change your own oil, but when you've got Jiffy Lube and it costs like $20 more than the equipment to do it yourself, it's like, maybe my time is worth that $20. It's like, I can totally see doing that.
Yeah.
So like I do want to say, so you go to Make MKV. That's step number 1. You go to makemkv.com. And they have their forum there. And right there, they have a whole UHD section, specifically for ultra high def Blu-rays, that whole section there. And there is a sticky thread right there. We'll have the link to it, which is like everything you need to know to do this yourself. And if you can read through that whole, it's all in the first post of that sticky thread, and you can read through it and you can follow the step-by-step directions. I do believe anyone with technical inclination can do this themselves. It is not like literally writing code type of level of stuff or writing a script even. But it is definitely a series of steps. It is cutting and pasting a bunch of code-looking language, especially on Mac, because they actually have a little graphic user interface that someone had developed for Windows, but they didn't develop a little graphic one for Mac just yet. So my take on this is there are people right there in that very first sticky thread, that very first post, they have links to them, who get the optical drive that you're going to need. One of the options is the Asus that you mentioned, and it's the least expensive, so I like it. It's the one that I use. I've never had any problems with it. I have no problems recommending the least expensive one, is that particular Asus drive that can read Ultra HD Blu-rays. But they've taken that drive, and they've done all the steps, because what you actually have to do is replace the firmware that comes on that drive. When you buy that drive brand new from Amazon or anywhere else, the firmware that comes on it won't let you read Ultra HD Blu-rays. But you can replace the firmware, which is following a series of steps. It's not the end of the world, but it's also not nothing. And if you're the least bit uncomfortable with it, you can just buy one that's already ready to go. Now, the other part of it is, since he's using a Mac laptop, this is going to have to be an optical drive that plugs in via USB. So there's a very nice little enclosure that you could buy. It costs, $52 on Amazon. It's a great enclosure, and you take that Asus optical drive, you plug it into this enclosure, and now you have a USB interface. But it's like, if you don't want to deal with any of that, and you're willing to pay basically $100 more than if you did all of this completely by yourself, that's essentially what you're looking at, to just buy the one that's already done for you. It's actually a retailer or a seller, I shouldn't say retailer, seller in the UK who's still doing the Asus ones. There's somebody who's dedicated to the US, but he's only selling more expensive drives from Pioneer that are now discontinued, so I don't exactly know what he's going to do. But the one who has everything ready to go with those inexpensive Asus drives, it's like $80 to $100 more than buying it completely by yourself and doing all of the steps yourself. But if you're like, I don't want to deal with the time, I don't want to read through the thread, I don't want to follow those directions, I don't want to copy and paste the programming language to replace the firmware, it's like, just spend the extra $80 and get it all set and done. And we'll have the link where you can do that right there. So that's the hardware that you need. You're going to need your Mac computer. You're going to need this Asus drive in an enclosure that gives a USB interface. You buy it from this retailer, it's already ready to go. The firmware has already been updated for you. And you're going to need the Make MKV software. That's everything you need to rip a disc. And then I'm going to have a link to a very, very simple tutorial. It doesn't even have any talking in it. It just shows you what to click. Because when you're doing a Zidoo, you thankfully get to use the easiest backup of a disc that you can possibly do, which is you get into the Make MKV software, you don't even click the big gigantic button that says like start, open your disk here. You don't even click that. There's a smaller icon just above it, which just, you click that and it just takes the entire disk and dumps it into a file for you. And the Zidoo can read that file. It's like, it's technically 2 button clicks because you have to click OK, but it's a 2 button click process. No settings to adjust, nothing to fiddle with. It is as simple as it can possibly be at that point. So if you can buy a drive from a UK retailer, if you can plug a USB plug into your Mac laptop, if you can open the Make MKV software and you can click one button and then OK.
Well, so far, you can't open the MKV software, so we're already running into a speed bump.
that sorted with him via email because, yes, Mac is like, this didn't come from the official Mac store.
Yeah, I had the same problem.
We can't let you run it.
Yeah.
But
I've had the same problem.
You can get around that, and we did. But yeah, that's what I would do because, I mean, I did go back and forth with him on email. I'm like, okay, here's what you would do if you were just buying that Asus drive naked from Amazon. Here's the enclosure you can buy separately. Then you got to put the drive into the enclosure. Then you got to flash the firmware and all that. I'm like, you know what? Just pay the extra $80 because like that's not really the thing that's holding him back. So that's the whole procedure though. It's to me that's not that bad.
Is that the end? I'm sorry.
That's the end of that section.
I felt like there was another sentence coming afterwards.
We're on to D.
Okay. So what should he get in terms of a hard drive or other storage solution for his RIP disk? He honestly doesn't intend to rip his entire disk collection. More like 50. You are going to rip the entire thing.
You're going to end up doing it.
You're going to end up doing it. So just if you do not buy the storage for it now, you will end up buying the storage for it later. So, it's up to you. Anyways, he honestly doesn't intend to rip his entire disc collection, more like the 50 that he most commonly uses, so you'll have some of the convenience of being able to play any of those with a few button clicks. It's not going to happen. So, how are the movie files going to get from his Mac laptop to where he does the ripping on the Zidoo drive? Would it maybe make more sense to just get an external USB hard drive and just physically plug and unplug it back and forth? Or could he use a USB flash drive to shuttle rip files from his laptop to the Zidoo, or should he be putting everything on a NAS? How much of a pain is it really to get new movie files onto the Zidoo for playback? I thought the whole idea was that you would just rip it to a bunch of hard drives or a hard drive, and then plug that into the Zidoo, and that'd be the end of it, right? Is there any reason to do it any other way?
That is an option. There are multiple completely reasonable ways to do this. So first of all, if you get the Z30 model that I suggested, that you can put a desktop hard drive right into that Zidoo unit. The maximum it supports right now is 16 terabytes. There's sort of a capacity limit for the ones that you can put right inside of its built-in bay. So that's 16 terabytes. Now that will hold your entire 175 disc Ultra HD Blu-ray collection that you have right now, because most of them aren't using the full 100 gigabytes that an Ultra HD Blu-ray could theoretically hold. So that's pretty good. I would probably go ahead and get a 16 terabyte drive. Now, since that's a desktop drive that would be like inserted into the built-in bay of the Zidoo, it wouldn't be the most convenient thing to take it out of the Zidoo and either put that into an external enclosure or get one of those like docks where you can plug a naked drive into it to connect it to your computer and do things that way. It wouldn't really be the most convenient. You could do it that way, but I probably wouldn't. But what could be very convenient, especially if you are considering using that service to have someone else rip discs for you sometimes, is you get yourself a 2 terabyte external USB hard drive, like a solid state one, so that even if you're shipping it to this person, there's really no chance of, any kind of mechanical damage or something like that. It doesn't have to cost very much. The 2 terabyte solid state USB drives are like $50-$60 these days. So that to me, like that's essentially like a flash drive, right? A flash drive could work too. You can get a high capacity flash drive. It'll just cost a little bit more.
Excuse me, I apologize.
But I think that's what I would do, because then you just have a separate USB hard drive so that you can plug into your Mac anytime. You load like 20 movies that you just ripped onto that. You just plug that into your Zidoo and cut and paste from one hard drive to the other. I think that's probably the simplest. Now, the other thing is you can connect your Zidoo player to your network, and it can become a network accessible drive. So you could send the files from your Mac to the Zidoo's hard drive over your network. That's another completely viable option.
Yeah, it's going to be slower than plugging directly in. That's the only thing. And you'll have to wait longer.
I will say the Zidoo's whole network thing, little bit touchy here and there. It uses because the whole thing is an Android computer. So it uses what they call the Samba server. So it's not a built-in thing. It's like a third-party software that's on top of things, and it's like it's not always completely 100% reliable. So to me, it's like, yeah, I have a USB hard drive. I dump a bunch of movies on there that I ripped onto my Mac, plug that USB hard drive into my Zidoo, and move the files over. Simple as that. I think that's the easiest.
I think that's probably the easiest way as well. And those solid-state drives in particular are like stupid fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So let's say he has a Zidoo and some Ultra HD Blu-ray disc rips to a hard drive. What's the audio and video quality going to be like? Will it compare to playing those same discs on his Panasonic UB9000? Well, obviously the Panasonic is going to have better audio quality because...
Don't do this, Tom. Somebody's going to believe you. They're going to believe you. No, this is...
I was trying to come up with a reason, and I couldn't come up with a reason.
Oh, because it is going to be
a one-to-one transfer. It is going to be exactly the same. Any differences that you may hear or see will not be because of the file.
Right.
If there were some setting differences in the Zidoo, if you plug the Zidoo into a different HDMI input on your computer, on your receiver, or maybe your TV, if you decided to do that, maybe there's a different setting going on there. I don't know, but it won't be because of the ones and zeros that you transferred from the disc onto a different disc.
Yeah,
it is exactly the same.
It is bit for bit identical to playing the original physical disc. So look, the Zidoo does not have your Panasonic UB9000's Panasonic HDR optimizer option, right? Doesn't have that. If you've been using that, doesn't have that. But in terms of like what came off the disc is bit for bit what comes out of the Zidoo. Now the Zidoo does have its own picture enhancement options if you want to turn them on. So that can make a visible difference. I will thank Zidoo that by default, all of their enhancement features are off. By default, they're all off. It is purely optional if you want to mess around with them and turn any of them on. But by default, they're all off, and you're getting bit for bit what was on the physical disc.
So he asks, wow, there's a lot of questions here.
There was a lot, yeah.
How glitch prone are the Zidoo players? He's seen some complaints about some movies freezing up or refusing to play or other playback quirks sometimes. He's also seen complaints about the amount of maintenance that's needed in order to keep your movie collection all looking exactly the way you want it. Basically, is using this thing going to be a pain? So I don't know what the organization, like that's the thing that would concern me.
Okay.
Like what I don't need is an alphabetical. I mean, I think if I was going to have it if I had to choose one way, it would be alphabetical.
Sure.
But I would also like to have them somehow self-sort into categories.
Okay. Like genres, for example.
Genres, or, even like when you go on to the Disney Plus app, you can go into, Disney movies, you've got the National Geographic, you've got the Marvel, you've got Pixar, you've got like kind of separate categories so that it makes it a little bit easier to drill down into what you want to actually find. But you're right, like genres, like, I want to watch something science fiction, or I want to, but I don't want to have to go through and do all that stuff myself. So how much is that going to be like done for him?
Yeah, so first of all, in terms of glitch prone, I will say in terms of playback, from my experience using my Zidoo that I've had since I think Christmas of 2023, so not ages and ages, but for a while. So like I think all of us who have ever used physical discs have experienced a glitch on a physical disc at some point, right? You get some has a glitch while the movie is playing or refuses to play or whatever it is. So I would say the Zidoo has been better than physical discs as far as that goes.
Oh,
but
really?
But that does not mean 100% glitch free. There have been glitches, absolutely. The most common one I've ever come across is you have the option of, when you select a movie to play on your Zidoo, either going straight to the movie immediately or launching it as though it really were exactly like putting in the disc, and it goes to the disc menu and all of that stuff, exactly like you would on a disc. And so the number one most common thing I've ever come across is in those disc menus, because almost all of those are written in Java. And it's geez. Yeah, sometimes it's like the text won't render properly, or you'll hit the play button on the disc menu interface and it won't go. But thankfully, there's that option to just go back, stop the playback, and then just go, okay, just jump straight to the movie. Forget the disc menu, just play the movie immediately. And that almost always works. So yeah, that's my experience as far as glitches go. In terms of the maintenance, the number one thing there is when you do the disk ripping procedure that I talked about, there's the full one-to-one backup. It's just going to give the movie folder file whatever the default name is. However it was named on the disk, that's what the file folder is going to get named, because Make MKV is making no changes at that point. Just pure one-to-one, exactly what was on the disk is what ends up on your hard drive. So I don't know that this was actually the case, but like it's a good example hypothetical. Like let's say you're ripping John Wick 3, right? Which is technically titled John Wick: Chapter 3 hyphen Parabellum, right? That's the actual full name. Now, when you get that, the file folder might just be titled JW3, because a lot of them are like shortened or abbreviated like that. And so the Zidoo, when you put that file onto its hard drive, you tell it, okay, scan for new files, and it does that. And it finds the folder file name, and then it goes to its gigantic database of movies, which is like the movie database, and it puts in the file folder name as its search query. And it's like, if all it has is JW3, like, I don't know, you're going to get John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum back from that, right? It might give you Jaws 3 or something, who knows? Or it might not be able to find it. So that's the number one thing, is if you've never looked at what the file ends up being named, and you've never made any very reasonable changes there, basically the file folder just has to be named something where when you put that in the search box of the movie database, the correct movie is going to show up. Because the Zidoo is downloading the poster and the description and the backdrop and those genre tags, right? Is this a comedy, horror, whatever it is? It downloads all of that based on, it does the search from the file name, it gets the first result from that search, and that's what it downloads all the metadata for. So that's where people are like, it's always downloading the wrong movie. I'm like, yeah, because you never looked at any of the file names you have, and you're giving it JW3. Like, who knows if that's going to be the right movie? Or it gives you Scream. But is that the 1996 version or the 2022 version of Scream? They both had exactly the same name. It's like, give it a fighting chance, right? If you were a human putting in a search term to the search box, name your file that. That's honestly the number one thing, because once you have that and it has the correct metadata downloaded, then you can organize it in all sorts of ways, by genre, by release date, by newest added, by alphabetical, of course, all those things that you want to do. So just give the file names correct things. That's the number one thing to do.
Sounds great. So he asked, why aren't these types of players more readily available at U.S. retailers? Why can't you just walk into a Best Buy and purchase them? Even dedicated AV dealers and custom installers don't seem to carry them. They only want to sell you Kaleidescape. You are a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche, is what it really comes down to. This is a super small group of people who are willing to even consider this. And not just because people don't want it. Because I agree with you. I think that people would like this. They're like, if I could sell you an easy to do product that would take all your movies and put them in one place and let you stream them, and you never have to put another disc in and have a clean interface and all this other stuff, you'd be like, yeah, I think people would want that. People do want that. You know what they don't want to do? Pay for it. Or have to do it themselves in any way, shape, or form. And that's what you've run up against in your own experience. Like, I want this, but this seems like either a lot of money or a lot of trouble, and I don't want to
look at all the support we just gave in this answer. Best Buy doesn't want to do that. They don't want to be giving you the instructions for how to do that, and they can't give you the instructions on how to rip a disc. That is technically illegal. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to rip your disc. And look, the Zidoo, it's like, it doesn't access the official Android app store. Anything that you're putting on there is either side-loaded or a third-party version. It's like, there's nothing kind of official about this thing. So Best Buy is never going to carry it. Simple as that.
No, I mean, so what they're going to carry is something that's quote-unquote legal, which would be Kaleidescape. And there's already I mean, Kaleidescape is its own thing because, first of all, nobody else wants to really go up against them because it's not a big enough market that it can tolerate that. And what are you going to do, undercut them? Okay, well, if they could undercut themselves, they would. They know that what's hurting them most is the fact that they are an exclusive or a premium brand, simply because of the amount of money it takes for them to, get the movies from the from the studios. So, it's not like there's like gobs of money to be made. It just doesn't. Every time somebody comes up with a solution like what you're looking for, they get sued out of existence by people. So
happened to Zapiti.
Yep. So what's the longevity of a Zidoo unit going to be like? How long has Rob been using his? Since 2023.
Yep.
Is a model that he buys today going to be obsolete within 2 years? It's 2025 and he's still using it.
Yep.
Because he wouldn't want to pay his installer to program his universal remote control for it, only to have to replace it within just a couple of years. Come on, man.
Yeah, what format is going to be going beyond 8K 60, which is what the current players can support? No, it's going to be fine. If anything is going to fail, it's going to be a spinning hard drive. But I mean, you get a decent spinning hard drive, it should last you more than 2 years.
So what if he ends up wanting to have a Zidoo player in more than one room of his house? Will be forced to put all of his disk rips into a NAS at that point? So that all of the Zidoo players can share the centralized storage, or would there still be a way to just start with a single hard drive and not have to move anything or re-rip any disks when he adds a second Zidoo player in a different room of the house? I can't see why you can't stream from one Zidoo to another, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, you absolutely can. That is what that Samba server was actually primarily for. It was mostly to let one Zidoo talk to another Zidoo, and Zidoo number 1 has a big old hard drive in it, and Zidoo number 2 doesn't, and Zidoo number 2 can stream the movies from Zidoo number 1 over that Samba server.
There you go. So after all that Zidoo talk, is there any chance that NVIDIA Shield and Plex would be actually a better choice for him?
Nope.
I can tell you right now, no.
Nope.
It would be if you wanted to do more of this manually, but you don't.
If you want to fiddle, then you
I got an option
then you
for
want
you.
Plex. If you want to fiddle.
So with the disk ripping choice of hard drive and that service, he can pay to rip disks for him just still work just as easily.
No,
the answer is no,
because Plex can't play the complete 1-to-1 disk dump that Zidoo can. That's what we like Zidoo in this scenario for. Plex requires that you do the full MKV process, convert it to a completely different file format, which does require you go through a whole bunch of settings on every single disk. It takes way more time. You sometimes end up with files that aren't exactly what you want, and you have to do it over again. You're like, nope, that ain't the solution. For you, a Zidoo is way better.
Finally, we get to another question from a different person. I need more coffee. I will tell you that right now. How much time have we? It feels like
we've got at least 20 minutes left.
17 hours. Joe, just bouncing an idea off us here. Joe has been a long-time Paradigm speaker fan. Well, they suck. Get rid of the Paradigm.
Quintessential Canadian sound right there, Paradigm.
Yeah, Paradigm. At some point, he's owned at least one pair of every version of the Reference Studio series from V1 up to V5. There used to be a Paradigm Signature series, which got replaced in Paradigm's lineup by the Persona series, because they like anime. And since the Reference Studio series was one rung down, that has been replaced by the Founder series now. Mm-hmm. So Joe has heard our recent remarks about not exactly being in love with the Founder series, and he doesn't disagree. He's still a bigger fan of the older Reference Studio series, although at the moment, the only ones he still owns and uses are a pair of Reference Studio 100 V4 towers. Mm-hmm. And those live in his office as a 2-channel system to play music from his iPad via a Yamaha integrated amp. The thing is, he frequently checks Facebook Marketplace, and there's no shortage of used Paradigm Reference Studio speakers available for sale. He's pretty sure from his own experience that you can reasonably match the different version numbers with each other. Paradigm kept the timbre match very consistent all along, which is very consistent. Not only about Paradigm, but also all the Canadian brands are like
pretty close. You
can kind of mix and match them however you like. They're all being tested at the NRC anyway, so they end up with this very flattish response that is, or even response if you don't like the word flat. So simply put, what's our take on assembling a 9 or 11 speaker system with nothing but used Paradigm Reference Studio speakers? How do we feel that would compare versus a system of current Paradigm or SVS speakers that are in the same price category when new, i.e. the Paradigm Founder or SVS Evolution, Ultra Evolution series? Yeah, I think you can mix and match them all you want. I don't have any problems with that whatsoever.
Yeah, if you're like super picky, maybe I'd try to get the front 3 all from the same version. Even that,
I guess I would do that.
I mean, the centers were always a little bit different. Because of the horizontal layout and everything. But I mean, I would have zero qualms mixing any version number for my surrounds, for surround backs if I have them, for the overheads. My goodness, I wouldn't care one iota. So yeah, I gotta say, I would straight up take, I mean, as long as they're obviously in good working order, like I wouldn't want to buy damaged used speakers, but
sure.
as long as they're in good working order, there's no reason why Paradigm Studio Series speakers can't last a very long time, because they were well constructed. As long as they're in good working order, I would prefer them over the Founder Series. And like the SVS Ultra Evolutions, I'm basing off of measurements right now, because I haven't heard them for myself yet. But yeah, like the measurements, they don't look bad, but they don't look like fantastic on there. Like I'm like, I don't know. I mean, especially given the price savings that you're getting, it's not like, so you had the Paradigm Studio Series speakers.
Right. They've
always measured really well. They continue to measure very well to this day. It's not like that changed just because they got old. They've always been really neutral, tell it like it is speakers. If that's what you want, they remain so for as long as they're functioning properly. So I would be very happy to get a set of those.
Yeah. I agree. Adam. So first up, he has responded to Rob's pleas to know what name to call him by, and it's Adam, not John. Although, yes, those are his first and middle names. Anyways, I like calling him John Adams. But
that was easy.
He didn't like that. Anyway, Adam asked us what we thought about potentially getting the ToneWinner AT300 13.3 channel pre-pro that replaces Outlaw model 976. As was mentioned, he's using 5 speakers and 2 subs. So Rob assumed his interest in the ToneWinner was all about the channel count and potentially being able to use front wide speakers. But that's not really the case. Tom wins. I told you he was just asking them that way so that we would give him a pre-pro and not a receiver.
Yeah.
He's only looking to do a 7-speaker setup, no front wides, and the main reason for his interest in the AT300 is that it's the least expensive pre-pro out there, regardless of channel count, that includes a full set of XLR pre-out connections, of which he needs 0 of.
Well, really. He's going to make the argument for why he needs them.
He's wrong.
He's going to check if he's correct.
He's currently renting the house that he's living in, and all of its electrical outlets give him hum issues. Since any non-audio gear still functions okay, the landlord has never been forced to fix it. And the only way Adam has ever been able to escape the hum is to exclusively use XLR connections with his Crown amps. His subs are passive and powered by separate Crown amps. So he's tried using an AV receiver in the past, and it hummed, and it also died. Was it humming or was it screaming in pain? Who knows? If it was a TCL, you'd have money for it right now. And he wasn't until he was exclusively using XLR connections for everything that the hum finally went away. So given all of that, does the ToneWinner AT300 seem like his best option at this point? Emotiva has discontinued their 13-channel pre-pro, and that costs more anyway, and it only has RCA pre-outs, no XLRs. So since front wides are not a concern, and he never had automated room correction with his Outlaw 976 anyways, is there anything else about the ToneWinner AT300 that is a downright deal breaker? Or did he overlook another all XLR option near this price point because he's pretty sure he hasn't? So he's getting hum and his receiver died. Did he say this is an apartment or
no, it's a house. It's a house.
I mean,
but he's tried different electrical outlets plugging that AV receiver into it, and every single one of them hummed.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, he's always used these external amplifiers for his subwoofers. Yeah. So it sounds like those have always been plugged into a different outlet, no matter what.
That would be the problem, though, really. Although, that you want them to be all in the same circuit.
You can have noisy outlets where all of them are noisy. So, I mean, look, an XLR connection, when all 3 pins are connected, does include a ground connection.
It does.
Now the 2 separate devices are grounded together, not the case with an RCA connection. So there is some legitimate, possible reasoning where you have a ground loop hum that gets ameliorated by an XLR connection because now you have common ground between the 2 devices, especially if one of them is a 2-prong and one of them is a 3-prong. that can happen. It's a little bit too simplistic to say XLR solves the problem. There's a little bit more going on there, but at least it's not completely impossible that, okay, you had a ground loop hum because you had one that's 3-prong, one that's 2-prong. So then when they're not grounded together, you end up with a ground loop hum. When they are grounded together, they both share the third prong on one of them, and you get the common grounding that shunts that noise. So that is possible.
Yeah, ground loops are always kind of tricky.
Oh yeah.
When it comes down to it.
I mean, yes, the correct thing is to have the house properly grounded, but it's not his house. He doesn't own it. The landlord's not being forced to do it, and obviously is not in the mood to do it. So what the heck else can a person really do? So look, like I said, the shortcomings of the AT300 were, if you were going to buy it for front-wide functionality, it's not the best choice, because the only time it's going to happen with Atmos. It has HDMI 2.0, not HDMI 2.1, but it does have eARC. So, he was talking about getting a new display that supports 4K 120 and VRR and all of those things. So that means any source that does those things has to be plugged directly into your TV, and you are going to have to rely on eARC to send the signal back down, but it can do that. So yeah, I mean, all things considered, buy it from a place where you can return it.
But if he powers his speakers directly from the AV receiver,
right,
he's not getting hum, or he is getting hum. Like, I don't.
Well,
I don't
he was saying it was always
it.
humming, but I don't think he ever didn't have those subwoofer amplifiers connected to it at the very least, right?
Right. So therein lies your problem, right?
Yeah.
Is the subwoofer amps that are the issue here. So yeah, I still don't. I mean, I'm always going to come back to, you can get more functionality for less money if you go with an AV receiver, especially if there's no reason not to. Now, there's a reason. He's trying to convince us that this is the reason. The reason is because he's got to have these subwoofers with the crown amps and it hums or whatever. But is it really a reason? Or can we plug everything into the same circuit and fix this problem? Because if we can just plug everything into
it definitely sounds like he doesn't want to give up, because he's got crown amps for everything, and it sounds like he just doesn't want to give those up.
And that's fine, but don't ask us what the best solution is, because the best solution is for you not to do the thing that you're doing. And okay, so you want to buy this ToneWinner. Okay, let's just put that out there. Yeah. You want to. If you need a blessing of somebody else and it will make you happy to buy this ToneWinner, and you really only need is somebody on some random couple of guys on the internet to say, yeah, I mean, that's not a bad choice.
Yeah.
It's not a bad choice. Fine. Yeah. Do your thing. I just think it's not the best choice. Like, why wouldn't you try to fix the humming that you're getting? Because what he's worried about is this whole his other AV receiver died, so he's blaming the humming and the dying and everything else on that. But I think maybe one of those things is just coincidental. I mean, I don't know what.
No, the humming, I can see that happen. Like, even if you switch to self-powered amplifiers, they're going to be plugged into a different outlet. It's probably going to happen again. And we're not going to tell you to not have subwoofers. That's not what we're going to say.
But we are going to say that let's see if there's a way that we can figure out how to plug everything into the same circuit. Because maybe there's other outlets in that same room that maybe are a little bit less convenient for your subwoofer, but you're just buy a longer power cable and run it along the wall till you get to the outlet that is on the same circuit, rather than what you are doing, which is
I'm at the point with this where I'm like, I buy it from a place that accepts returns, but I'm definitely okay at this point with his explanation of what his system's actually going to be of giving the AT300 a try, because I mean it is at a really attractive price. It's hard to point to an AV receiver that, yes, you can get more features, but at that very same price point, like, not a lot more features.
It's only running 7 speakers. So
I know, yeah.
All right. Do you, man. Infinite Gary Gary was using a 16-year-old 46-inch LCD TV with a CCFL backlight in one of his rooms. The only thing I ever played on it was live sports, either from a cable box or an Apple TV. He doesn't want to go much bigger. 50 inches would be the max. It was 46 before, not 55. Be right out. His major requirement is that there cannot be any signs of motion smoothing. None of this. The setting is set to off, but there's actually still some smoothing happening that you can never quite fully disable nonsense. What would be our top recommendations?
And remember, Gary does not like bright. He
doesn't
likes
like
dim.
bright.
Yeah.
He likes things to be dim. Kind of like me. Dim.
So I say, get yourself a 48-inch B4 LG OLED. Because, I mean, the B4s are the dimmest of the OLEDs, but that's not a bad thing for Gary. And, yeah, I mean, the B4s are great. Great value. $550 right now for the 48-inch of the B4. I can't think of anything that's going to be better than that going in here. Going to look fantastic. Yeah.
Sounds great. Get that, Gary. Stefan was revisiting a previous HDMI cable recommendation we had made for him. Given the long length he needed and given that HDMI cable will be installed in a wall, we recommended either the CL2 rated fiber optic ultra high-speed cable or an armored detachable fiber optic cable, both from the brand Rui Pro. Rui Pro.
And I love that Rui Pro has brought back that whole, it's a data center fiber optic cable, and then you can plug HDMI ends onto it, giving you the potential option of changing them in the future, but also making it so much easier to run inside a conduit inside the wall. You can have a nice narrow diameter Smurf tube in there and pull it through no problem. Don't have to worry about those HDMI cables, like the actual plugs, physically getting stuck in a bend somewhere.
So we noticed that the CL2 cable is described as being HDMI 2.1b, while the detachable cable is only being described as HDMI 2.1 and not 2.1b. Well, that's why they don't want you using the numbers, because it's confusing, much more confusing than putting Ultra 96 on everything, even though it's not Ultra 96.
Right. What could go wrong?
It just might be Ultra 96. It aspires to Ultra 96-ness.
I mean, it should be more than Ultra High Speed regardless. 64 was the minimum with Ultra 96.
I bet we're going to find some Ultra 96s that aren't even close to 64. I bet the early ones are going to be like topping out at 40, especially when 48.
When they're the fake hologram and not actually a real one.
So does that matter? If he were to get the detachable cable, would he need to replace the plugs at some point in the future to make them 2.1b instead of just 2.1? No, this is going to be fine.
So the cables, when it comes to HDMI cables, they were definitely never supposed to have the spec number associated with them whatsoever. They're actually, I mean, like, this is legitimate. There is no such thing as an HDMI 2.1 cable. There are high speed, there are high-speed premium, and there are ultra-high-speed, and now Ultra 96.
Ultra 96.
HDMI cables. None of them have the spec number attached to them whatsoever, and that is legitimately the case. So it truly does not matter. In fact, there's language on HDMI's own website that says, yeah, if you see a HDMI 2.1, 2.1a, 2.1b on a cable, it means nothing. The cable is ultra high speed. If it's ultra high speed, it can transmit everything that HDMI 2.1 ports could possibly input or output. What you need to look for is ultra high speed certification, and both of the Rui Pros have that. They put in the 2.1 and the 2.1b just because they know people are searching for that.
Right.
They know people are typing that into the search field. So like, well, we want to make sure our result shows up when someone's typing in, I want an HDMI 2.1 cable. So that's why it's there. But it needs to be ultra high speed. Both of them are. They will both work totally fine.
So if he gets a detachable version, it requires plugging in a USB power plug. Will the USB ports on his G4 OLED and Denon A1H be sufficient? Rui Pro says the cable ends require a maximum of 600 milliwatts?
Milliwatts, yeah.
Milliwatts.
And so the
I would
answer,
imagine that. I would imagine that would be fine.
Yeah,
that's what I would think.
Yeah, the USB ports on your TV and your Denon will both be perfectly fine. The minimum that a USB 2 or USB 3 port is ever going to put out is 2.5 watts. That's the minimum that it might put out, is 2.5 watts. So needing a maximum of 600 milliwatts, 0.6 of a watt, yeah, 2.5 is obviously greater than that, so any USB port will be fine to power the USB plugs on those Rui Pro detachable HDMI ends.
So Sasi sent like a stupid number of questions.
And he acknowledged that in his email. He's like, spread these out, answer them, don't answer them, whatever it is. Now, this very first one is like, let's see, not the very first one here. If you want to jump down to, what is it, C? Like, that's specifically about you,
Just
Tom,
so you guys know, I'm scrolling here. I think H is the lowest one.
I think it goes all the way. We were not expected to answer all of these in one go. But C is specifically about you, Tom. I don't know if you want to answer it, though. He didn't know if you want to answer it.
Let me see what it is here.
See what C is here. Yes.
So we're gonna answer Sasi C, or maybe I won't.
That's right.
We'll all find out together in a second here, because I haven't read the question yet.
That's right.
So and then we're gonna end, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Yeah, right.
So Sasi only discovered AVRant in 2022, and he's never gone back to listen to the entire back catalog. No pressure from him, just curiosity. But if Tom is willing to share any of the backstory, what was his history with Audioholics? How did he get his start there, and why did it end? So how did I get my start there?
Sure.
That is probably an embarrassing story, but I'll tell it anyways because I don't care.
Right.
So when my wife and I, when she was pregnant with our first child, we started getting serious about house hunting.
Okay.
And it was during one of the many housing bubbles that have happened across my lifetime. And at the time, when we first moved to Los Angeles, which is where we were living, after we first got married, we were looking at condos and stuff, and we were looking at buying, and we didn't really have a lot of money. And I think we saw some condos and stuff, and the price range were like $50,000 to $150,000.
Oh, wow.
It's like the price range, which is ludicrous now. I wish I would have picked up 1 million of them, because I'd be a bajillionaire at this point if I had just sold high. But at the time, we didn't have the money and stuff, so we rented. And then by the time, a year or two later, when we were, we both had our careers going there, and we were feeling pretty stable, we started looking for a house. And what happened was we just kept, the pricing kept moving us further and further away from our work till the point where our commute was going to be like an hour to 2 hours one way for each of us. And we had a child on the way, and we were like, this is just not going to work. So we moved. And because my parents at that time lived in North Carolina and her parents lived here in Clearwater in Florida, we moved to Jacksonville, which was kind of midway. It was a little bit closer to her parents than it was to mine, but that's where she had job offers. She had a couple of she had a couple of job offers, and one of them was in Jacksonville. So she took that one. So I got a job with the school system, and I worked in the research and evaluation department. And basically my job was to deal with tests and testing results and answering questions of researchers. Like if you were a researcher, you might call and say, hey, I would like to have this data. And we would tell you, what data we had and whether or not you could have it and what form you could have it in. Because sometimes, we had to, get rid of sensitive stuff, identifiers, that sort of thing. But that was my job. But if there was nobody asking for data and there was no big testing going on, I did a lot of nothing. It was a lot of sitting around. So I ended up we had internet, and I ended up on forums all over the place, just because at the time I was heavy duty researching what home theater I wanted, what home theater equipment I wanted, because I wanted one for years and years. And I mean, we had a new child, and we just moved, and we were poor, and we were living in an apartment for part of this, and then we ended up buying a house there, all that stuff. And so I was just like constantly updating my Excel file with what gear and in fact, Outlaw Audio, which we've talked about today quite a bit, their pre-pro was on my list for a long time before the Denon 3805 came out. And I was like, that's the one. So one of the forums I ended up on was Audioholics. And because I was bored and I was sitting around doing nothing a lot, I would post and answer questions. And I was just like a lot of you. At first I parroted a lot of stuff, of the knowledge that was online. And then, I started questioning it a little bit. And what ended up happening was we bought a house. I got my first speaker system and my receiver, set everything up, and then decided to DIY some acoustic panels. So I created 2 articles for Audioholics. I offered it to them for free and said, "Hey, I'm gonna make these DIY panels. I'm very bad at DIYing things. I have never used power tools before, and I'm not good at cutting wood, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to write these articles for people who are just like me, which is a lot of people, I think. And that's what I did. And I created my panels, and they kind of sucked, but they were fine. Sure. They hung on the wall, and you couldn't really tell how bad they sucked unless you looked at them close. But I wrote the article, and they were like, "Well, do you want to write some more stuff for us?" Because I heard somebody say recently, never try to turn your hobbies into a career. And it's good advice. And the reason it's good advice is because the minute someone offers to pay you to do your hobby, it takes the fun out of it.
Yep. That's certainly for me. That's how my mentally it goes for me, for sure.
Yeah. So getting paid to do your hobby is very hard because it makes something that you're doing for the enjoyment of it be something that you're doing for the money. And for a lot of people that they just disappear. Like the minute that you offer to pay them to do the thing that they love to do, they stop wanting to do it.
And so I start super questioning myself because I'm like, if I'm actually going to write this for someone else to consume on a professional level, I'm like, I want every single detail to be correct. And that's really difficult.
Yeah. So they started sending me discs to review, DTS audio discs, which aren't a thing anymore, but at the time they were kind of a thing. They were trying to be a thing. So they sent me a bunch of discs to review, and I would review them, and I was funny, and they liked my writing. And eventually, I think they sent me some speakers, which I believe were the Orb Audio was one of my first reviews, Orb Audio speakers and stuff like that. And, then they started paying me, and it sort of like built up.
So it was freelance. I mean, it was freelance to begin with.
Yes. And eventually they were like, okay, they took me to CES or CEDIA or whatever. And they basically said, what is it going to take for you to be full time? Like how much money do you need? And I told them a number, and they're like, okay. And they're like, okay, now we're to the point where now you can do that. So I quit working for the school district. I started working full time for them, and for a while that all worked out very well. And then the housing market crashed in 2008 or whatever it was.
Sure was.
And at that point, like everything went to pot. Like all the advertisers dried up. All sorts of money. So my wife's job, which was in consulting and engineering, she's a civil engineer, and consulting changed to she was part-time and I was working full-time for Audioholics. So she went back full-time. I started working part-time for Audioholics with a very restrictive amount of stuff I could do for them. Like they said, this is how much we'll pay you per article, and you cannot write more than this number of articles per month because we can't pay you any more than that. Which is, we were all going through it. So my wife's, and this is when we moved over to Australia, because she was like, listen, anytime they offer anything, I got to look like I'm like the team player. So I'll put my name in the hat for like these jobs, but I'll put restrictions on it to say I have to take my whole family with me if we're moving, and I have to be there for at least 6 months or something like that. So the short version is, she put her name in the hat. Somebody decided that they wanted her in Australia, and they transferred us out to Australia. So I kept working for Audioholics under that new agreement. And my wife worked full time in Australia, and by the time their mining bubble burst, the housing market had kind of all the damage that had been done was done, and things were starting to recover over here. So we got shipped back, and we moved to where we are now in southern, central, I guess, southwestern Florida, which is very close to her parents, which is what she wanted. And I kept working for Audioholics, for a while. But, that it just sort of faded.
It was
essentially
a shrinking capacity as it went along.
Yes. And I mean, there was no hard feelings. There was never any kind of discussion of, hey, we don't like what you're doing, so you're fired. It was more of, I just stopped writing for them. Okay. I got busy with other things. I got a job offer. I started working other jobs, and I wrote less and less. And he had other writers that were working for him, so it was fine. It worked out. I just kind of faded away, if you will, with Audioholics, because it was always kind of freelance. I was a full-time employee until the housing the bubble burst, and then I went back to freelance, and then I just stopped working for them.
Yeah.
So. That's sort of that history. Okay. And then I've done a bunch of different jobs. And then AVRant has stayed, it was mine from the beginning, continues to be mine. And I just never stopped doing it.
There was a period I remember, because I can't remember at what stage of co-hosting I was when that took place, but there was some little bit of questioning there, because like AVRant was very first announced and promoted on Audioholics' forums, right? I think that was the very first place it was ever. So there was, I recall there being a moment of like, oh, are Audioholics going to claim ownership of AVRant? Which I recall you being like, okay, if that happens, we're just going to shut it down and start something completely new from the ground up, and then there's not really any question about it.
So when he changed the full-time to freelance again, part of that letter that he sent me that said, and you can have all the AVRant is yours, and we're not going to make any claim towards it. Blah blah blah.
Which is pretty easy, because it's never made any money. So what?
Yeah,
what
it was never meant to. Really, it was just another thing that they offered on their website.
As we've just seen with like Digital Trends and Caleb Denison, sometimes things are said and it seems like things are right, and then it turns very, very sour. So thankfully that did not happen. We've never really had any like problem as far as AVRant goes, like as to who owns it or where like the PayPal donations end up going or something like that. That's never really been in contention in any serious way.
No, and it was fine. So that's sort of how AVRant started. AVRant started really as just sort of a discussion of hey, these other forums have podcasts. Why don't we have a podcast? And I was the obvious choice for it. And like at the time I was working full time, I had time to do it. Right. And neither the other people that were in the company were interested in really doing it themselves at the time. Maybe they feel differently now. I don't know, or maybe they wish they had felt differently at the time. But I don't. At the time, they were like, "I don't want to do it. You do it."
The juggernaut financial success that AVRant is, I'm sure they're just kicking themselves.
A niche of a niche of a niche. So yes, that is the answer to that question. Okay. That's how AVRant got started. It was just sort of a. That's how I got started with Audioholics, and then Audioholics was just like, we need to have a podcast. Everybody else has got a podcast. Okay. And I wanted to do it by myself. Initially, that was going to be my thing. I was like, I don't need a co-host. I don't want to have to deal with all that. And then I've told this story before, but I recorded an episode by myself. An episode with a male co-host and an episode with a female co-host. And we listened to all 3 episodes, and then we were like, the female co-host was by far the best. It wasn't even.
And you had a great tagline. It was a geek and a girl, and it was talking home theater, and it was quite unique. I was a listener from very, very early on, because I had just started getting into podcasts like about a year before AVRant ever started, and I had found, because all I did was go to iTunes, because it was still very much iTunes at the time. That was definitely the place to find podcasts in the early days, because that whole thing of pod, that was from iPod. That's where the whole word came from. So they were the place to go to find podcasts. And I just went there and I typed in home theater and I typed in HDTV. And of course I found Ara and Braden, because they were like the first, and they were one of the like known popular within obviously a niche of people, but they were the known popular HDTV podcast. It wasn't even the HDTV and home theater podcast yet. They were just the HDTV podcast, because HD was a brand new thing, and I wanted more. Like, I liked them, but they put out 1 episode a week, and at the time it was like a 20-minute episode once a week. Right. And I'm like, I want more. So I kept searching for home theater and HDTV and AV and those types of things, and found AVRant. So that was really, really early on. And I don't know at one point if you like requested for people to write in. You started giving out an email address anyway, where people could send feedback. So I was
That doesn't sound like me, but I must have.
I was one of the early ones. You had Tom and Dina starting things off. I was one of the early ones, and I was pretty consistent in writing, very often correcting grammatical errors. So I became Grammar Rob, because Sasi might not even know any of Grammar Rob. If you only came in
Grammar
2022.
Rob was I used to complain about him all the time. I still complain about him, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And basically, I just bulldogged my way into becoming the co-host of this podcast by just sticking around and never leaving. And when somebody else would fall off, there was Rob. So yeah, it was never a request on Tom's part. I just stayed so long that there was no getting rid of me.
It was. He's not wrong, and it's not an insult in any way, shape, or form. It's not like, it was just like, God, he's just always. Like, he won't stop writing. And you got to understand Rob. And my wife and I every once in a while, I'm like, Rob's been texting me. She's like, oh, yeah. I'm like, look. And it's just paragraphs in text. Imagine what the emails looked like. They were just juggernauts. I was just like, he's the kind of person that he's got a point of view. And if you're not going to agree with him because he's right, you're going to agree with him to make him stop talking. Those are the options.
I did
Either way, you're going to agree with him.
I did well
in
debate.
I don't mean that. I mean that with all love. I do, because it's hilarious. But obviously, Rob is, we have a great relationship here.
You've heard me. Yeah. No, I did well in debate in high school, and it was a pretty good technique. You just talk them into submission.
All right, so we know we have Sasi's million questions left, and I think that's all we have for the rest
it. There's going to be a whole bunch of those. I've talked to Lee Overstreet. He'll be here next week. I might try to include Joe Klusnick as well and do a 3-headed podcast, but that's going to depend on timing and technical stuff, because we're not going to be able to use Teams, because the 3 people is going to go over the thing limit, so I don't know if they want to try jamming. I don't know. It might be more headache than it's worth. So the plan is to have Lee here. Joe, if you're listening, and I know that he will be, that's my plan for now. But if you want to get in contact with Lee and myself, and we can all figure out if there's a way to make Jammy work, then that could be what happens.
Okay. So if you want to get your question answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. Yes, by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Gurinder for going to avrant.com, clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 131 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yes, for sure. Gurinder, thank you very much for that PayPal donation. And patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So big thanks to our 131 patrons over there.
So I want to thank Rohan for sending some movie codes for me to test. I'll try to get on that right after this podcast.
Thanks, Rohan. Sorry.
And thanks for those who sent in notes of gratitude, including Henry, Joe, Greg, Andrew, Rohan, James, Stefan, and Sasi. Thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, I'll say the names one more time. We got Henry, Joe, Greg, Andrew, Rohan, James, Stefan, and Sasi. Thank you all so much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. We really appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.